Okay, would like to start this meeting Thursday, February 23rd, special board meeting, Orange Unified School District Board of Education, started at 5:35. Apologies for a late start here. A couple things I want to mention. When you're filling out these cards, we need to know what well, Mr. Ortega will explain, but when you're commenting tonight, it's only on the acting superintendent, that subject, okay, in about closed session, which is now. And then on the information item, the district presentation, okay, so that would be 5A, right? So you can only speak to those items. We are not taking any comments on non-agenda items tonight, okay? So, Mr. Ortega, you wanted to make a comment about the cards.
Yes, thank you. For after or before, I'll call the following names, and all I have is a first name, and there isn't anything else on this to speak to. So if your name is Chuck, Don, Mary, Britt, I think this is Chuck Emmanuel. I don't know if it's the same, but the first one just was Chuck. It says audits, so I don't know if you mean just 5A, the data comparison or not, so you just need to change that or clarify that with me. And then Lori Kaler, if you can come up as well to clarify what you want to speak to as well.
Yeah, so before we get started, can you come up here and speak with Mr. Ortega about your card and putting down what you're going to speak to? We'll take a moment. We'll wait. Can you read the names again, or read them one by one?
First name is, well, the only name is Chuck. Don.
Can you please come up here so we can get on with the
Mary.
meeting?
Britt, Britt. Yeah, that's fine. And then Chuck Emmanuel, and Lori Kaler. Are you Lori?
Yeah, I wrote what my
All right. Okay, one last thing, comment I want to also make. We're going to stick to the 3-minute rule. We've not been doing that. We've been pretty liberal about, so little by little, we're going to be kind of adjusting and sticking to more of our rules. So for starters, it's going to be 3 minutes only. I've instructed our technician the mic will cut off at 3 minutes, okay? So please be ready to summarize when you get close to 3 minutes. Thank you. All right. Call the meeting to order. Mr. Ortega, we have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay. All right. So 1D, public comment on closed session items guidelines. Members of the audience may address the Board of Education on the closed session agenda item. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 20 minutes per topic. And that will be something in the future that we will start adhering to. Okay, persons wishing to speak should submit a public comment card prior to the meeting. All right. So we were taking comments on public employee appointment, government code 54957B1, the title acting superintendent. First card,
Mr. Ledesma, I have some questions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Ledesma, I had some questions that I had emailed you. Can I ask them before we hear public comment, just for clarification, like on the differences between acting and interim? And
Okay.
okay, so first, I'd like to know what's the difference between acting superintendent and interim superintendent?
They're, generally speaking, they're the same. Acting is somebody internal, and interim is usually external person coming in. But they're, generally speaking, they're about the same.
Okay. And is there a timeline set in place regarding how long the acting superintendent can be in that position?
In my experience, no.
Okay, so we discussed that in closed session?
Yes.
Based.
A lot of what you're asking me, we're going to be discussing in closed session.
Okay.
Like I said, I could not, in my email back to you, I said I could not be specific because I didn't want to violate the Brown Act.
So based on the list of questions that I asked regarding item 2A, I can only ask the first question.
I think so.
Well, we're now in open session, so if you can ask now, I'm assuming the Brown Act would be because he communicated with other people. So we're now in open session, so that's not a violation
We
of the Brown
won't
Act to ask the
violate
questions.
the Brown Act by discussing it now.
Mr. Covert, can you please go to the podium and just maybe field some of these questions as they come up, if need be?
Good evening. I'd respectfully suggest that since you have a number of cards, you take the public comment cards first, and then after that, if there are any board members who have any open session question items about the item, we can discuss that. And then after that, the board will adjourn to closed session.
Well, guys, may I comment on that? I would respectfully disagree with that because I think that the questions that at least I have are relevant to and may be relevant to any speakers that want to speak on closed session items, because thus far on our closed session items, it's been very, very vague. And so what I found is that people are very confused about what it is that we're doing because it is so vague. So I think if we can clarify, we're not talking about the substance of what's going on in closed session, but we're asking these questions about process before we go in. That allows the public to know what it is that we're doing.
Well, if I may, thank you. The Brown Act has safe harbor provisions, and the item complies with the Brown Act safe harbor provisions. We don't want to keep people from making their remarks within the time allowed. And
Can you
I don't
explain
want
that? I don't know what that means.
3 minutes.
Okay.
They can make a comment on the public comment item.
No, the safe harbor, what are you talking?
That's
if
under
you
the
may
Brown, sure.
clarify.
Oh, I'd be glad to
Sure.
for you and the public as well.
Thank you.
The Brown Act specifies agenda items and their format. They're commonly known as the safe harbor provisions.
Right.
So that if you follow them, you're in compliance with the Brown Act, and this agenda item follows that.
So it's your position that we can't ask questions on, like a clarifying question on what's an acting superintendent versus an interim superintendent? Would that be unusual?
That question I heard was asked and answered.
Okay. Can we ask questions about, for instance, if any materials have been provided, any candidate statements have been provided, any resumes have been provided?
No,
since-
that's a closed session discussion.
Okay, so you're saying that when we go in there, the public will have no idea whether or not we as board members have been provided any information or not?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a personnel matter, and that will be discussed in closed session.
And can you just clarify for me why this is a closed session? This is not required to be a closed session item, correct? Appointment of an acting superintendent wouldn't be required to be because we don't have an existing superintendent at the moment and it's an in-house person. So
Qualities of persons who are being considered for employment are traditionally discussed in closed session. So the board has the freedom to express its opinion on individuals who would be up for consideration.
okay, but it's not a requirement.
It is generally recognized that closed session items dealing with personnel are handled in closed session and the action taken is reported out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so can I direct my questions to the public comment section?
I don't know what you mean by that.
The questions that I emailed regarding the process that we have public comment, mainly the procedures set in place for our Spanish speakers, and if there was a way we can indicate on the public comment cards that they are Spanish speakers, so we can then also call our interpreter to come in to be prepared to be able to translate.
I know I've spoken with some folks who are Spanish speakers, and they have expressed to me that they may have their own interpreters, meaning, so if we have a need, if our interpreter is here, then that interpreter will work with us.
Okay, is that just today because it's a special meeting, or is that going to be the practice for every regular meeting?
My understanding is that we always have an interpreter here. If we don't, then
Okay.
something's changed.
I need it. Yo necesito un intérprete, por favor.
Sí, cómo no.
That concludes my question.
Es que tenemos bastante gente aquí en el grupo que puede hablar español y uno de ellos puede que sea por voluntad ayudarte con intérprete. Okay?
Isn't it law that we have to, as a district, offer an official interpreter?
I'm assuming it is, but if the interpreter is supposed to be here, our interpreter is supposed to be here.
Okay, can
They're
we
supposed to
check
be
with?
at every meeting. If they're not, then I don't know what happened.
No tenemos intérprete, a mí yo no puedo entender.
Es que alguien que están sentado aquí puede ayudarnos con eso.
The district interpreter is in a separate room. I think that's what she indicated last time, that they're interpreting in a separate room so that the live stream is also in Spanish, since it's the link on here as well. So because they're in a separate space, she asked for us to call on her when we needed her. So we
Right.
could bring her in.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
So before we have public comment in Spanish, they would indicate that they need an interpreter, and then we would just wait for the interpreter to walk in.
If the person put that on the card that they need an interpreter, then yes, we would call the interpreter in. But if the person did not put that they need an interpreter, then we have to take a moment and bring them in from the other room.
Estamos informando a los papás todo lo que está pasando aquí, a los papás que hablan español. Si no está interpretándose estas juntas.
Anda interpretando por la red ahorita.
Can we have
Pero
that
si ellos no
interpreted? I
saben
don't-
que tienen que indicar que es en español, entonces ¿cómo van a entrar y decir en la carta que necesitan español?
I don't understand what you're asking. The thing is that we have, this person is asking about an interpreter for this whole meeting. And I just told her that, yes, the meeting is being interpreted on the live stream. But to have a person in here to interpret, then we need another interpreter. We've had it before.
Okay.
Pues creo que es importante tenerlas, especialmente lo que está pasando.
So what-
Somebody interpret
Hold on.
what
She-
the
she said-
conversation is,
okay,
because I
hold
don't
on.
know
She
what your
just said
guys are saying.
we think it's important to have the interpreters here. And in the past, again, we had heads up in previous meetings where we were going to have plenty of Spanish-speaking people, and what would happen is we'd have an interpreter in the back, and we'd have an interpreter in the back, and then the Spanish-speaking folks would all kind of group up together there, and she had some kind of a voice, and they had the earplugs or the earbuds, and that's how they would interpret.
Segregation by language.
What's that? Okay. But we need to indicate where they need to go for this. Okay. All right. What's that? Well, right over here, she's right over here.
Just let her know that
Mr. Ledesma, can you tell her in Spanish?
Señora, si vienes acá, ahí viene alguien para ayudarte con eso. Para llevarte, yo creo que te van a llevar al salón donde está el intérprete. I told her that this gentleman's going to help her with the interpreter.
May the interpreter address the board?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. May I use the microphone?
Of course. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and public. My name is Sonia Postuma, and I'm the interpreter and translator for the school district. Our team, as I was indicated before, is in a room next door. We are broadcasting this meeting live, and we're taking turns to do that from our booth, which is separated, but we're always available, so I will be here. We are available in several ways. We have interpretation equipment that we can use to interpret simultaneously inside the room, as well as we can designate a room if the board decides so, where we can take all the participants that need interpretation. I'm also available for comments if people want to do comments. So if you wish so, we can stay here in the room. I let the board decide.
Okay, well, number one, we probably need you in the room in case somebody needs to be interpreted from the podium there. But this person over here asked if she could have the meeting interpreted.
Yes, so I can provide the interpretation devices and can interpret simultaneously for her here, or I can have her come into the room where we're doing the stream, the live stream. So maybe that's something we can plan for the next meeting, to have the equipment here and a team inside this room.
Definitely.
So that, yeah.
Yes, we'll plan it, but we need something to happen now.
Yes.
So if you could speak with this person over here and see what she would like to do.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Stay in here, and then you'd probably have to interpret the meeting to her
Yes.
here, or if she wants to go to a separate room.
We'll do so, and we'll.
Tenemos que tener a alguien, ¿ok?
Sí, está bien. Sí, está bien. Sí. Sí, señora, sí.
Yeah, member of the public is saying that she rather have somebody always present in the room so that they feel that they have part. Yeah,
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Y si ella gusta de hacerle una pregunta a un miembro de la mesa directiva, ¿cómo va a hacer?
And if she would like to make or ask a question to the members of the board, how will she do that? She will have to fill out
Okay.
the comment card, yes?
Right, fill out, okay, let's understand something here. The protocol here is folks address the board from the podium. It really is not supposed to be a discussion with the public. It's supposed to be you address the board from the podium. And then questions will be answered as later. You can submit questions, and then our staff will answer those questions in a timely manner back to you.
Very well.
Okay? But right now, this was a concern with the interpreting, need for an interpreter, so that's why we're having this discussion. All right, next thing. Ready? Okay, here we go. Comment card, first one.
Okay, so the public comment has been read. Just once again, members of the audience may address the Board of Education on the closed session agenda item. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 20 minutes per topic. Persons wishing to speak should submit a public comment card prior to the meeting. I was asked by staff to read this also to those who are going to be speaking to the board, is that not to talk fast, avoid interpreting others, avoid speaking over each other, speak close to the microphone, ask for an interpreter in the room if you need one. This is a request because the interpreters are interpreting this live, and so they need to be able to understand with some clarity. So with that said is, we'll go ahead and start off, and like we've done it before, I'll call the first person and the next one will be on deck. So Rosa, and then Britt would be next.
Hi, my name is Rosa Otero. I am back because I have some information and I would like to address in regard to the superintendent. So I spoke with Mr. Velasquez. I have spoken with Mr. Abercrombie. I've been in this community for 25 years living here. I would like to give you some background since you guys had so graciously wanted to say Gunmarie Hansen had some, was perfect superintendent. As well as I would like to address the fact that for this closed session superintendent, as far as the parents, who we actually would support, and who myself I would support. First, I would like to say from LACO, Los Angeles County Office of Education in the 1990s, David Flores, who is Gunmarie Hansen's husband, and Gunmarie Hansen, as well as Corella, were working together. Gunmarie Hansen and Corella actually worked together as friends. So later.
Excuse me, ma'am, is this going to be related to acting superintendent?
Yes, I'm going to move quickly through this part.
Okay.
I would like to put on 1999 because this relates to the Velasquez, where Mr. Ortega was actually brought, that he had a conflict of interest. I just wanted to state this so that our new superintendent hopefully is not going to have any conflicts of interest, which is what we want, right? So 1990, approximately, Gunmarie Hansen brought into Montebello School District, reading consultant, Cynthia Herrera worked together with Gunmarie Hansen under the Montebello School District, so which they became friends. Cynthia Herrera is actually the consultant for Orinda, which was a $3 million program. Moving forward, Gunmarie Hansen moved to Laguna Nueva in the 2000s. Adolfo Rivera, who actually works for the OUSD current school district, is who's working. Us as a community, myself, I am in support of Mr. Abercrombie because he does not have any, from what we have researched, any conflicts of interest. He has the experience in the background. So regardless of the laughing in the public, he's been able to, with D and F students, be able, without extra programs, no extra funding, he's actually been able to raise some of those grades. So this is something that was done without outside money. So we actually support him. A lot of our extra funding, especially to our Title I schools, has been going to a lot of programs that has not been pretty transparent. So we want someone that is going to be actually more transparent so we can move forward as a district. So that is who we, as far as our community, is in support because we just want education. That's all we want as far as parents and for our kids. Thank you.
Is there a Britt? Is there a Britt? Going once, twice, okay. Michelle Bowen. And after Michelle Bowen would be Gregory Pleasance on deck after.
Good evening, OUSD Board. I had the opportunity to speak at the January 19th board meeting, and at that board meeting I shared my experiences as a student, educator, and parent in this district. I also mentioned how the hasty decisions of the board on January 5th left our school without a principal. Based on the actions I witnessed during the January 5th and January 19th board meetings, the district has money that has yet to be used for our children, and it is now has been taken from them. Imagine how parents feel after they have been asked to provide school supplies and help raise money
Ma'am,
for our
is
school.
this have to do-
It is in relation to the topic, sir.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to that, imagine what your teachers go through when they're purchasing supplies and also to supplement their curriculum. The reason I'm bringing this up, sir, is because during the board meeting, you felt that giving the interim superintendent $1,000 a week in travel expenses wasn't enough since he was doing you a favor. Meanwhile, we're donating money and raising funds for the schools. So my point to this is that I hope that going forward, that the board does not make any additional costly decisions for an acting, interim, or permanent superintendent and taking money from our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you Gregory?
I'm Gregory.
Is it John, Jon Sanks, on deck?
My public comment relates to the closed session item 2A on what this public employee appointment means for the operations of our district. So don't ask me if it's related to the agenda item. So I'm Gregory. I have 2 kids at the wonderful Jordan Academy, and I'm on the PTA there. Here's what I want to say today, and this appointment is a symptom of this. This board majority has no plan to strengthen the education for any child in this district, and this latest appointment is a symptom of that. Here's what this board majority has done for us this year. They've harmed our public schools. You fired a decorated, competent leader who led us through COVID and her key deputy. You immediately destabilized a district that serves 27,000 students, many of whom count on our schools as resources of last support. And then you replaced her with John Ortega's business partner, who lived in Iowa, a person who got paid and then didn't even last a month. And here we are again.
The
harm that this appointment will cause.
Sir, how does this relate to the acting superintendent?
Stop the clock if I have to answer questions, please.
No, I say we stop.
I am explaining how. I am explaining how the continual turnover in staff affects the operations and quality of education in the district. That's easy to understand, Rick.
But how does that affect?
Stop interrupting me.
How does that affect acting superintendent?
Because we're here
that's the agenda item.
Appointing another district personnel as a result of your firing of Glenn Marie Hansen.
Please speak to that.
These are all. I am speaking to it.
No,
I am speaking to it.
There's a lot more information there.
I am speaking to how the board's actions and agenda item 2A specifically affect the quality of education in the district. That's as factually related as it gets. If you keep interrupting me, you're going to be taking away my First Amendment right to be heard on the agenda item. Stop doing it.
We have a meeting here.
Number 2.
We have protocols to a meeting.
The board has engaged in illegal and unprofessional conduct. You engaged in Brown Act violations again today. Rick and John have egregiously violated the First Amendment in their threats and their outbursts against public commentators.
What threat did I make?
Madison continuously spreads lies through social media while using the OUSD logo. You may not think that legal consequences are coming, but they are. I promise you. You've also brought hatred to this district. You've brought people here, not from OUSD, who spread hatred, homophobia and intolerance, people who threatened us with physical harm, one OCCA member who violently called parents animals and who wants to fire teachers for exercising their First Amendment rights, which is obviously illegal. Every teacher has a right to be heard here and immoral to ask for. And you've brought ignorance. You don't know the first thing about educational policy or even what goes on in the public school classroom. None of you have ever talked about, I don't know, teacher professional development, smaller class sizes, infrastructure investment, or even investing in student extracurriculars. Our PTA has to raise cash to pay for backpack hooks, and you're here talking about CRT? It's absurd. So this board majority does not have a plan, and I'm telling all the parents here that, whatever side you're on. And if you're a parent here and you don't agree with me, but you're not here being hateful, and you're just here for your kid because you want the best for your kid, I get that. And I don't judge you for that, and I'm empathetic to that. And I'm telling you too, this board majority doesn't have a plan for your kid either. John's in it for the money, Rick's in it for the tiny bit of power, and Minor's in it because she's working for people who basically just don't want to fork over wealth to pay their fair share of taxes for public education. They don't care at all about my kid's education or your kid's education. So if you're that parent and you don't agree with me right now, I'm not mad at you, and I hope you're not mad at me. Come have a conversation with me about why we feel the way we do. We'll have a low-key, polite conversation. I welcome it because we all want best for our kids and the best education our kids can have, and we deserve as a district much better than this board majority.
All right, on deck is Michelle Weisenberg.
Hi, my comments directly relate to the agenda item for appointing an acting superintendent, and some of the comments I make, I'm bringing up because I don't want us to make the same mistakes that this board has recently made, and I hope you will let me speak to that. $387,857.60 is the payout that we paid to Dr. Hansen for a no-cause termination. I keep coming back here because there's a lack of transparency, explanation, and in response to the predictable chaos that's been caused by the ill-thought-out appointment. And I hope we're learning from these mistakes. We spoke out overwhelmingly against this termination, and we asked what could be accomplished by a short-term superintendent. With the amount paid to Mr. Velasquez, conservatively, we're over $500,000. I don't know what the true value would be. And what did we get? Did we get an academic audit? No, we had a slide deck last meeting that had to be pulled from the agenda because it didn't match the description. We had SORA removed, but it was put back a week later. Have we even advertised a permanent recruitment for a full-time superintendent? I've Googled it. I can't find one. What have we done for the last month? The money that we paid out to an interim superintendent already could have been used to pay for a superintendent being available for the staff and parents, but Ms. Rumsey, who's not here, chose to use the money for nothing. My daughter's 5th grade class in Orange Unified is going to an Astro Camp at Irvine Park next month. This could have paid for 1,000 students to participate. Mr. Ledesma, you chose to use the money for nothing. The money could have paid for over 20,000 books. Mr. Ortega, you chose to use the money for nothing. The money could have paid the salary and benefits for 5 elementary school librarians. What did Ms. Minor use that money for? For nothing. When the teachers ask parents to donate supplies because the lack of resources to effectively run the class, the waste is shameful. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, regardless of your personal beliefs or politics, none of us want you to spend $500,000 with nothing to show for it. And I thank the parents speaking out against this board majority and insisting on transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility, and I dare say common sense. I ask you to appoint a reasonable internal candidate, which you should have done originally, conduct a transparent and legal recruitment for an ethical, permanent superintendent, and stop playing the games.
Hi, I'm Michelle Weisenberg.
Hold on real quick. The next one on board is Lee Tusnot. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Weisenberg. I don't know what's going to happen here today in the closed session. Nobody here does. Heck, even some of your board members probably don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is this: the board majority has done nothing but cause chaos since the moment they got the majority. They fired our outstanding award-winning superintendent with no notice, no cause, and no plan. They have done everything with no notice and no plan. This level of incompetence and unprofessionalism is mind-boggling. You have left Mrs. Corella hanging in the wind with your assertion that her employment depends upon an educational and curriculum audit. But none of you seems to know what an educational and curriculum audit is, what it would entail, who would conduct it, how would they conduct it, and how would it be paid for? So here we are 7 weeks later, and we still have no superintendent and no assistant superintendent of curriculum to speak of. It's chaos, and it's purposeful chaos. Who is this mysterious acting superintendent that you have listed on your agenda? Do you even know? We all know that the technical order of succession what the technical order of succession should be and who should have been elevated immediately upon the removal of Dr. Hansen, and that would be Deputy Superintendent David Rivera. We could have saved our district and our students $70,000 had you just appointed Mr. Rivera to begin with. But that would have been logical. We could have saved our district $1.5 million if you just let Dr. Hansen finish out her contract for the rest of the year. But that would have been logical. I'm sorry. That would have been thinking about what is best for our district, its employees, and the students. I honestly don't think that any of the four of you care the slightest bit about what you are doing and how it is affecting the staff and the students. It's not about improving our district for you four. It's about moving forward the agenda of your funding overlords who funded your entire campaigns and without whom you wouldn't be sitting here right now. Follow the money, everybody. We know who's really controlling the district.
2 seconds, Lee. Is it Soren Williams? Soren, sorry about that. Yeah, you're on deck. Thank you.
Good evening, board. I appreciate you taking the time. I am here to support each and every one of you. I am here hoping that my comments are superfluous and hoping that logic and reason are going to take hold, and that tonight is the most uneventful night that has ever happened in the history of OUSD. I'm really hopeful that there are no surprises. I am really hopeful that logical things happen. I have spoken a couple of times here, and it is always in support of transparency. My biggest fear when it comes to the governance of this school board, the use of my tax dollars, and the care and education of my children, my 3 kids, amazing kids in this amazing district, are that you guys manage it correctly. And so the transparency is the biggest thing on my mind all the time. I sent an email asking everybody for the opportunity for town hall forums or some form of dialogue where we could try to ask questions and truly understand what it is that you're trying to get at. Maybe we can provide suggestions. Maybe we can have healthy, constructive debate and get through it. I did hear back from a couple people. I appreciate that. Not everybody, and that's okay. I'm here once again to ask for some form of public forum that isn't us standing here talking at you, where we have an opportunity to ask questions and get responses. It's been 49 days since Dr. Hansen was fired. And to date, I have not seen, you stole my thunder over there, I have not seen a posting on EdJoin or any other public forum. I have not seen a press release about a search for a permanent superintendent. I understand things need to get handled right now. An acting superintendent makes perfect sense while that search is going on. But what concerns me is we've gone almost 2 months without, at least publicly, at least transparently, conducting one or beginning to conduct one. So I am here in support of all of you, 7 of you, minus 1, to say, if I can help, please use us as the public. Let us in on what you're looking for, and let us have a say in how this goes so that we can all come together and move forward for our kids. I would also please say, for those of you that are here that don't have kids in our district, the idea that you should be dictating who is taking over the leadership of our district is offensive to me. So please just bear that in mind. Thank you.
And the next person on deck is Alex Broussard.
Hello, board. I'd like to echo the last few speakers' comments. They were very, very, probably more eloquent than what I'm going to say. So we're here again. I guess we're going to have a 3rd superintendent today. So let's do a quick recap. December 14th, this board was sworn in. January 5th, about 3 weeks later, the they somehow decided to fire the very good superintendent we had running everything. Miraculously, I don't know, maybe you guys have telepathy or something, you decided to hire Ortega's buddy from Idaho for 2 months. He lasted about a month, and so here we are again, appointing some mystery person to be acting superintendent. You know, I could have sworn that you wanted transparency on this board, and you have done nothing transparent yet. So we're still waiting for that. Does the board majority or the majority of this board even know who this mystery person is? Is it Rick's buddy this time? This chaos and management is all this board is capable of. This board could be so many good things. You could be pushing for so many good things, and instead you're choosing chaos and incompetence. You know, I would expect the board at a bare minimum not to be the agents of chaos in our community, and that's all you are right now. So a couple questions I have is, how does this chaos and mismanagement improve the test scores that Madison, Rick, and John claim to be worried about? How does it do it? How does this chaos help keep or attract good teachers in this district? I know you guys are out to get the union, but all of these wonderful schools that Madison is posting about on Instagram and all these wonderful students, they're taught by these union teachers. They are doing all the work. Everything that's great in this district is because of them. So how does this chaos stop the declining enrollment in this district? I don't know, if I'm watching the news and seeing what's happening here, maybe I don't come to Orange USD. Maybe I don't come here because of this. So the fact is, this board doesn't know how to build or create anything. Their campaign promises are all based on lies and ignorance. They only know how to destroy. They could have kept our superintendent and planned for a smooth transition. They could have proposed new curriculum that somehow is better than what we have, but they have no plans. And that's why we must recall this terrible majority.
And the next on deck is Betty.
My name's Alex Broussard. I am a parent in the district. My daughter goes to McPherson. You know, Yogi Berra once said, it's deja vu all over again. I'm here to discuss agenda item 2A, so Rick, you really don't need to ask. We're here again with a lack of transparency. We have an agenda item that says acting superintendent. Finally, somebody asked what's the difference between acting and interim, so we actually know that now. But who's being considered? There's been no discussion of candidates in public. There's been no request for resumes, as has been previously pointed out. This all reeks, yet again, of backroom deals and predetermined conclusions. That reminds me of something. Anybody else? January 5th. I remember standing up here at that meeting on January 5th and telling you that what you were doing was a Brown Act violation because you had come to predetermined conclusions. I told you that I would find the proof. Well, email from Rick Ledesma to Angie Rumsey. Attached are documents for you to look over to prepare for the meeting. Remember, does that mean maybe they talked about it before? John will make all the motions. John, did you make all the motions? And it would be best if you seconded at least the first one, if not every time he makes a motion. Does anybody know if Angie seconded those motions? Maybe this email's why Angie's not here today. I will start the closed session meeting, and once I begin to discuss why we're meeting, John will at some point make the motion. I'll ask for a second, then discussion. John nor I will say much so as not to get dragged into their discussion. Their discussion? Are you maybe talking about Chris Erickson, Andrea Yamasaki, Anna Page, because you had formed an us versus them mentality. If the other side decides to dominate this discussion and they keep objecting and go off on their rants at some point, John will call for the question, which you can second. That stops all of the debate and we can vote on whether or not to immediately take the vote on the item being debated. If you want to touch base, phone conversation tomorrow, let me know some times that work for you. Phone conversation, we'll get that. Where you obfuscate, I will provide clarity. Where you thrive in the darkness, I will provide light. Where you work in secret, I will expose you. Brace yourselves. Discovery is coming.
Scott Resnick is on deck.
It is my hope that the new interim superintendent to be appointed tonight will be one who can work cooperatively with the board, not for the status quo, but as it continues in a new direction to improve the academic experiences for the district students. A cursory review of the district comparison results report not only validates the board's actions related to the firing of the superintendent who had worked for over 8 years in the district, but necessitated leadership under a new superintendent. The interim superintendent should be given the opportunity to manage the day-to-day operations and to work professionally with the board in the new direction so that a permanent superintendent can be appointed expeditiously without the vitriol that has continued in this district to date. It is my hope that the new interim superintendent will continue the academic curriculum, performance, and contract audits that will be helpful in charting the course for the new direction for new solutions for academic success. Upon a review of the district's local and national rankings, all attendees of the school board meetings this year and all voters in the school district, regardless of whether they are parents or not, should unanimously applaud the actions of the board and cooperate in the best interests of the students, the parents, the community, and the teachers. A new interim superintendent needs to be appointed to continue the day-to-day operations as well as to cooperate with the new majority board in identifying the areas in which improvement needs to be made, and to make the teachers have the right and the experience of having a successful student classes. It is my hope that we are able to work together. This is a nonpartisan issue, and even though I do not have children in the district, I have been interested in education for over 60 years. And I believe that when I pay my taxes, I should be able to have my say in terms of making sure that my school district will have the students in it that can contribute to the welfare of America. Thank you.
And on deck is Darshan Small-Aden. Did I say that correctly? Okay, sorry.
Good evening, board. I'd like to discuss agenda item 2A. Is that okay? We're in item 1D to discuss 2A. Is that correct?
We're in 2A.
But we're in 1D discussing 2A, and then we'll find out after about what happened in 2A in item 3A.
Right.
Who's on first? Okay. The agenda is really vague. So all of you who've been up here and have been able to cobble together 3 minutes, I'm really impressed that you've been able to cobble together 3 minutes on what is incredibly vague. Are you appointing someone to be an acting superintendent, or are you scheduling an appointment for the acting superintendent? A name of somebody you may have been considering would have been really helpful tonight, because again, I really don't know what we should be talking to other than you might be doing something later. Maybe you're not ready to share the name beyond just the 4 of you or the 3 of you who were able to make it tonight. Not even sure if the candidate knows his or her name. Do you know who you plan to appoint? Does anybody else up on the dais know who's being appointed? Does anybody in the public know who you plan to appoint? Are we submitting resumes tonight? Are you going to go over them in closed session? I can get that to you. I'm not looking for work, but look, I can last longer than a month and a half. The lack of transparency that we've all come to expect has really left me for a loss. Mr. Ledesma, how can I speak to your agenda if your agenda doesn't have any substance? This is our 4th meeting together in 2023, and the theme seems to be sticking. No transparency. Your appointment of Mr. Velasquez lacked transparency, and just like on January 5th, you haven't disclosed anything with respect to tonight's vacancy. What qualifications are you looking for in a candidate? How long should we expect before an executive search firm is hired to actually do this right? Do you have a timeline for when you expect to hire a permanent replacement? Was there any pre-planning involved in this appointment? Who are you considering for this role? I think there might be. The public has a lot of questions, and the only answer we do have, the one thing you've made consistent all year, you'll do everything in secret, and the public will be denied its right to provide input into your decisions until after your decision has been made.
Hold on real quick, please. Aaron Mahia is on deck. Thank you. Thank you, go ahead.
Good evening, Board. I come tonight to speak about the appointment of acting superintendent. Just to be clear, I'm on topic. Actually, I came to beg. Like, from my heart as a parent of a child, I'm a parent in this district. I have kids that have graduated from this district. I have current student in this district. I'm a taxpayer, a voter, homeowner in this district. Thank you. So I came to beg. I came to beg to stop the chaos, stop the backroom deals, stop making me come to these stupid special meetings. I'm so sick of them. I'm sure you are too. So I'm begging you to stop with the surprise tactics and simply do what a normal, boring, moderate school board would do. Follow the line of succession. Please appoint Mr. Rivera to the acting superintendent position and immediately hire a search firm to recruit a quality candidate who's willing to work with us to take the permanent position. Hopefully someone we can all agree on and get behind. And right now, what we need in this district is someone who can help instill confidence in the ship that is currently sinking.
Hi, my name is Erin Mejia.
Hold on real quick, please. On deck is Kathy Moffett. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So my name is Erin Mejia, and I'm here again tonight as a taxpayer homeowner in OUSD, and my concern for appointing yet another superintendent with a sheer lack of transparency. My interests lie in creating a better education for all children in OUSD. My belief is that with a flourishing youth, we leave our city better than when we came. Our house values increase, our society progresses. The string of actions in the last 2 months surrounding the superintendent is shocking and, quite frankly, embarrassing as a taxpayer. Not only have we wasted money buying out Hanson's contract, we have an assistant superintendent on indefinite paid leave pending whatever audits may be going to happen. And our last appointed superintendent left unexpectedly. Another waste of time and money. A direct quote from Madison's campaign promise: cut wasteful spending and return tax dollars to the classrooms where they belong. Rick, fight for complete accountability with your taxpayer dollars. I'm sure this has been a huge waste of taxpayer money that is diverting it from classrooms, and this is most definitely where the money belongs.
I would ask the board to stop appointing interim acting superintendents that are only with us for a short period of time that can not create meaningful impact and focus on the search in earnest, please. The children deserve an end to this chaos. I would ask the board to begin to become transparent with longer-term intentions of appointing a new superintendent suddenly. As I mentioned last time, I am afraid of what we're really doing here. Based on the extreme rhetoric and hyperbole that is being observed by supporters of the board majority, we are following a very scary playbook that is playing out nationally. As a fiscal conservative in Orange County, I am appalled by what is happening in our district, my home. And I would hope this board would become transparent tonight in appointing a new superintendent that puts the focus in the classroom, protecting the right of every child to a public education.
Next on deck is Bonnie Robinson.
Good evening, school board. I would like to address item 2A. In your approach to this item, the chaos continues thanks to our new board majority. My name is Kathy Moffett. I'm a fellow OUSD trustee for 22 years. My children all went to school here in our schools. I live within OUSD boundaries. I'm invested in this district. My kids all were well prepared for college. If other speakers do not identify as OUSD residents or parents, I will assume they are not. OUSD is a well-regarded district worthy of respect. Our community deserves to know what is happening in our district, but we have chaos instead. We deserve to have a calendar of meetings that we know in advance and can plan on. It is part of transparency. But instead, we have this chaos instead. When superintendents who are changed out like a revolving door, that works against accountability. Usually, when superintendents are sought, there is extensive outreach to the community to see what qualities they would like to see in a new superintendent. But no outreach has been done. Instead, we have this chaos. To the new board majority, you are so lacking in skills in terms of even running meetings. You fail to get any trainings. Please have some humility. Understand that you don't know all the things you think you know. Please go get some training. Please act legally and fairly. Please preserve our well-regarded school district and preserve the excellence that has been long cultivated in OUSD.
Give me 2 seconds. Is it Supna Chopra? Did I say that correctly? I apologize. You're on deck next after. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
My name is Bonnie Robinson. I'm here to speak about the appointment of an acting superintendent. As a retired OUSD teacher, a grandparent of a recent El Medina High School graduate, and a parent of children who graduated from OUSD schools, I'm extremely concerned about the impacts of the decisions being made by the current majority of trustees on this board. The decisions have been fiscally irresponsible, unethical, instructionally irresponsible, been made with a lack of transparency. Our children's education should prepare our students for participation in a global society. That means it should be inclusive, science-based, involve the teaching of critical thinking skills, and skills necessary to interact with others in a positive way. It should include the teaching of our identified state standards. That had been the case in the last several years under the supervision of Superintendent Hansen and our Assistant Superintendent Corella. And with that, OUSD had been known for excellence under their supervision until January 5th. The smartest, most fiscally responsible and educationally sound decision that could be made tonight would be to reinstate our former superintendent, Dr. Hansen, and Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Corella. As that is unlikely to happen, I request that the board act with transparency. appoint Mr. Rivera to take over at this time, and a decision not be made for a long-term or short-term acting superintendent or interim superintendent until everything is fully posted as it should be, until multiple candidates have been interviewed and fully vetted to ensure that a candidate that's actually well qualified to lead a district of 27,000 students in our global society and the staff required, as well as able to relate and communicate well with our community in the year 2023 and not the 1950s. Thank you.
And then the next person on deck would be Jolynn.
Hello, I'm here as a mom of two, an OUSD graduate and a current OUSD high school student. The lack of transparency in the abrupt firing of our superintendent last month and then the quick hiring of a new superintendent is deeply disturbing. The superintendent is the person charged with leading our school board, supervising the entire school system, overseeing the day-to-day functions of our school district, and making sure that all children have access to a safe and inclusive learning environment. So the leadership and vision of our superintendent has huge impacts for all our children. So, if you truly care about our students, then decision-making about who this person is should be made with thoughtfulness and care and open discussion and consideration. It should be someone who has been carefully vetted. So my ask for today feels like something that should be obvious, but here's my ask anyway. Please conduct a proper and legal search for a qualified candidate with open and honest communication among all board members and the OUSD community.
No other speakers. You're the last one, so sorry about that.
Hi, my name is Jolynn Lang. We're just starting our experience with first grader and one that's about to enter the school system. And I spoke last time for the first time at a meeting. It was a little hard to do, but I eventually was able to get it out. And what I spoke about was the chaos that this whole process has caused. And since then, before we've even managed to get to the next meeting, an email comes out saying that the interim is leaving the next day. And we still know nothing. There's a vague allusion to a cabinet that will be handling it. Until then, there's no information that's going out. So instead of less chaos, there's more since I was here last. And I don't really know the solution. I think today something came to me when I was sitting here, which is if I have a heart attack right now, your attorney can come up and tell you, you don't have to call 911. You will not be legally responsible if you don't call 911. And that's the same, you don't have to tell us what's going on. You're not violating the law by not telling us. But man, it's a jerk thing to do if I'm having a heart attack and you don't call 911. You could do something and do it because it's not illegal, but that doesn't mean it's right. As parents, we just want to know what's happening with our children, with our school, with our community. The school is a huge part of all of our community. So please, even if it's above the bare minimum that you're legally required to do, please invite us into the process and don't make us feel like we are in the dark. Thank you.
Is that it, Mr. Ortega? Okay, so now we will adjourn to closed session. Thank you.
You have to take the time.
Mr. Ledesma, the time.
I'm sorry, at 6:40? Thank you. Okay. I'd like to open this meeting at, let's see, 7:31. Open session, report on closed session action. Okay, the board took no action and will consider the item in closed session at the next regular meeting when the full board is present. All I can tell you is that we had some good discussion. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Ortega, can you read public comment on open session items?
Okay. Members of the audience may address the Board of Education on, on agenda items during consideration of that item. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 20 minutes per topic. Persons wishing to speak should submit a public comment card prior to the meeting. These things. Also, as I stated in the last presentation, or the last public comment, for the interpreters are requesting this for every speaker to not talk fast, avoid interrupting others, avoid speaking over each other, speak close to the microphone, and then we address the issue with ask for an interpreter in the room if you need one. And we do have interpreters here if you need the listening device. So what I'll do is I'll read the first, and then we'll do like we normally do, then call the next person on deck, and then we'll just go from there. So the first one up here is Mr. Lee Tuesnot, and then to follow is Sonia. All I have is his first name, so there is no last name.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you. I just wanted to say I read through the materials that are coming up in item 5A. I think it's 5A, correct? It's certainly useful information, and I'm a competitor. I believe it or not, once upon a time was an athlete, and so that competitive nature always comes out in me, and so that idea of striving for consistent and exceeding excellence is something that I applaud you guys for. That's what we ought to be doing. I do want to put a little bit of context, though, into what we see because, and I'm only speaking on behalf of a 10-year-old girl who gets straight A's because she works her absolute booty off with everything that she does and is terrified every single day, regardless of how well she knows the information, anytime that she has a test to take. And I just want to make sure that we, as kind of an educational community, are taking that into account when we look at numbers. Certainly numbers matter, and again, I want to be the best of the best. But I also want to make sure that we are really approaching the kids in this district as the little, awesome, amazing human beings that they are, and not just boil them down to a number on a report. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, after Sonia is it Valerie? Or it's Vol?
She's not here.
Oh, she's not?
No.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for the interpretation.
Not a problem.
Can you please pull down the mic a little bit there?
And then, okay, so then the next one would be, after Sonia, would be Cami Kenyon. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sonia Anderson, and I'm here because I see a lot of, I don't think that some of our schools are doing what they should be doing for our children. I had an incident at our school where my little girl was sexually harassed, but because of her age and the age of the person that sexually harassed her, they felt that they were just gonna sweep it under the rug. I spoke to the principal. I spoke to the teacher first, then to the principal. They didn't move the student out of her class. They were trying to ask her if she wanted to move. I was in the military 25 years. I know, as a matter of fact, that usually what they teach you is they move the violator out of there. It's very hard to prove, of course, because it was sexual harassment, and in elementary schools, you guys don't have cameras like they do in Florida. Either way, they swept it under the rug, or at least they tried to, until I kept on bringing it up, kept on going and hitting them up, saying, what are you gonna do about it? Because my little girl...
Excuse me, ma'am, we're talking about academic.
Oh, well, that's where I'm going to.
Okay. All right.
Because they ignored it, then now she's, of course, hurting with her studies and stuff. They're like, well, she was never like this. And I'm like, well, maybe now it's happening because you chose to ignore it. She's scared, pardon my French, she's scared of the little boy because he's in the same classroom, but instead they're trying to just ignore her needs and just keeping the little boy in the same class as with her. I understand that there's not a lot of classes in that school, but still there is space for him to move to the other classroom versus keeping them in the same classroom. And I think that she deserves better than this, being that she was a straight A student and now she's hurting and she's going lower and she's acting up because they chose to ignore, her pain, her emotional pain. That's the other thing, I think that we spent too much on that. However, we're not directing that in the right way versus, spending it on studies. There's a lot of children, look at my accent. So I'm going to be going for those people that need it. There's a lot of mindfulness circles for parents and stuff like that. I think our children need it more, and they need to be emphasizing classes for those children that need it versus wasting it on us parents so we can have classes on mindfulness circles. That's just my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you. After Cami is Dr. James Cox on board.
Good evening, President Ledesma, school board members, and our fabulous district cabinet members. I am Cami Kenyon, an alumnus of and 23-year veteran teacher at Orange High School, where I currently serve as the English Learner Services Coordinator and Activities Director. As you review the forthcoming academic data comparison, it is my sincere plea that you will take into account the many variables that make our schools unique and not take these graphs at face value. There are so many extenuating circumstances to consider, a few examples of which are as follows. Orange High School and its feeder schools especially have highly itinerant populations. We consistently and constantly welcome newcomers all year long. As a matter of fact, in the last 10 days, we have 5 new English learner students in our school. Our dual classified, meaning English learner and special ed population, is significant. Additionally, over the last 5 years, we have seen a dramatic increase in newcomer English learners who have come to us unaccompanied and/or have experienced traumas, the like of which the majority of us cannot fathom. When you review these test scores, please take all of these factors into consideration, not to mention the fact that these scores are reflective of a year that was academically far from typical worldwide. I am incredibly proud of the work that I and my fellow educators do with our special populations. Please review these graphs thoughtfully and do not jump to conclusions. Everything you see cannot be reflected in a number. Thank you for your consideration.
Hold on one second, sir. Sir, just hold on one second. I have somebody up here that just says taxpayer. Item A, so it's not specific to 5A. Sorry, I didn't. So we'll skip that one. So the next one would be Tanya, would be on deck. Or Tanya? No, Tanya? Yeah, okay, thank you. So you're next. Dr. Koss, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Just before I begin, I have some eye issues, and so if I stumble a bit over the reading, I'm sorry ahead of time. My name is Jim Cox, an OUSD resident for over 30 years. I'm a retired educator with approximately 50 years of experience in the areas of educational testing and the evaluation of instructional programs. I've given seminars to well over 500 school districts and other educational organizations, including several hours right here in Orange. My purpose for speaking this evening is to put testing and test scores in their appropriate context when considering their use. Yes, test scores are important. They can give us valuable information about our schools and district, but by themselves, they provide little, if anything, about the quality of the instructional program. There must be accompanying information. A common mistake of test scores is using them as the sole tool to determine quality of the program. There are too many variables affecting these scores for them to be the sole measure of quality. My research over the years determined that test scores are caused by 6 different variables. The quality of the instructional program is only one of them. There are 5 more, and in no particular order they are these. 1 is the testing environment. The further away from a classroom setting, the more likely it is that the scores will be negatively affected. And just an aside, don't test in the gym or in the cafeteria. 2 is the attitude of the teachers and students towards the test. The more ho-humish or more negative the attitudes, the more negative the effect on the scores. 3 is the test-taking skills of the students. Yes, there are a set of skills that, if present, can positively affect the scores. 4, the match of the curriculum content with the test content. The greater the match, the greater the probability of higher scores. The less the match, the greater the probability of lower scores. And remember, we teach much that is important, yet is not on the test. 5 is the demographics of the student population. There are so many variables in this area. For example, what is the stability of the EL population? How long have they been in the district? How long have they been at their school? And it was just stated before. Can I keep going? And yes, the quality of the program affects the scores. What constitutes program quality? What data are available that directly relate to program quality? We need these data as well as the test scores. I actually have a book I wrote back in the 90s titled Finding the Story Behind the Numbers, which addresses this very issue, but I've already overstepped my time. Before closing, one more thing I would emphasize is that 1 year of data is never sufficient to use scores effectively. Because of all the variations and all the variables affecting scores, we must have data over consecutive years. Thank you for your time.
So, Tanya?
Yes.
Okay. Next would be Britt. No Britt? Oh, okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I asked that this story be added to your academic audit. My sister-in-law said that she could write a book about how my nephew spent his time in OUSD under Hanson being left behind. He has a twin. His twin is hearing, and he is deaf. After going from Chapman Hills to Running Springs, the district literally wrote in his IEP that he should just get cochlear implants so that he could be normal. He also experienced being masked up during the pandemic, which, as other parents have stated here, took away half of his language and learning. His twin was able to maintain grade-level education. He, however, was left behind, along with the other, apparently, 90% of SPED kids. Thankfully, after the horrendous experience in OUSD, they fled to Texas, where he is thriving and receiving the services that OUSD refused to provide him. At the last meeting, the same woman that is heading the OUSD recall to oust our newly elected conservative board stood at this podium pretending to care about truth. She stood here and held up this book at the podium and claimed that the Spanish-speaking community was being lied to, that BLM was not being taught in our history book, when 8 hours prior to her on-camera performance, she was on Somos Los Padres' Instagram account saying that she found the pages and that she agreed with what was in the content. It's one thing to agree with the content, but it's another to lie on camera.
Can you please align it with this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the pages are in here. They're marked. It's not difficult to use an index, especially for a former teacher, apparently. But I am not asking to gloss over events that happen. I'm asking that our district abides by the impartiality clause of the controversial policy. Teach truth and not narratives. Erickson, Page, I ask that you publicly rebuke the lies that Erickson's recall organizer states. Tell her to stop lying to our Spanish-speaking community.
Please tie this into the study.
We support our public education and our OUSD teachers, or we would not be here to address parent concerns and low school performance. We care so much that we address these issues here in public forum, exposing ourselves to being doxxed, falsely called bigots, Nazis, extremists, and science deniers by Erickson and her recall supporters, all because we want these issues fixed so that our children can finally get the proper education we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett? A person on deck is Amanda H. Is there an Amanda? Yes? No?
Excuse me, before you get started, please, folks, a couple things to remind you that you got to tie your discussion into this, the test scores, and then also stick to the 3-minute time limit. Thank you.
You're Britt, correct?
I'm speaking on behalf of Britt.
Okay. And then Amanda H. Anybody? No. And then on deck would be Rosa. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can we
Thank
get
you.
the speaker's name then?
That's the name.
She said.
Sure, my name is Kelly. I'm speaking on behalf of Britt. Since the January 5th meeting, it seems as though some in this room and even on this board have chosen to throw a political grenade into our district. I understand that you 7 all have private lives along with personal values and beliefs. This office you hold comes with special responsibility. When one becomes a public servant, he or she speaks with different power and authority, and the words carry special weight. It seems that many public servants have forgotten this recently and needed a refresher. It constantly seems that there's a news story of a school board member, elected official, police officer, and other public servants who has publicly stated or posted something hateful, biased, or discriminatory. I don't mean statements about controversial political topics. I mean a display that lays bare feelings and attitudes that undermine the elected officials' ability to maintain trust and therefore continue to serve in this position. The root problem may be bigotry, ignorance, indifference, or hatred. All of these are unacceptable to those who seek to lead, to represent, and to serve. But the amount of political fodder that has been on display, namely you, Mrs. Erickson, has been a disgusting spectacle. As a reminder to all of you, but especially Ms. Erickson, you are elected to the board to serve as a nonpartisan school board official. Yes, we clearly know your personal politics.
It's not related to the item.
And when you make a political mockery of test scores, this is what you get. You get chaos. We have lousy test scores. We've had lousy test scores for over 10 years, and yet we keep playing political games. So yes, this is very relevant to test scores. For 10 years, we've had lousy numbers. They exist. We in OUSD deserve better. Those who wish to serve owe it to the community and individuals that they serve. Political service is built on trust. Political servants represent and speak for the whole community, and if they harbor bias or hatred towards segments of that community, or if they've not done their work to truly understand the harm that their words can cause, they are not worth the vote of confidence and trust that the position demands. Public officials must work to better the lives of everyone within the communities, not only those who believe the way they do, but for everybody. Ms. Erickson, the display we have seen from you in the past 2 months have been nothing short of disgusting political theater. It's relative. You have clearly directed Mrs. Yamasaki and Ms. Page to wring their hands about how the majority is being political, while you, Ms. Erickson, and may ask others to do your bidding. But you made this whole thing a political circus, calling in all your apologists to hear from each meeting.
Ledesma is not going to stop. I'm going to ask to stop because this is not relevant to the topic.
During closed session, I couldn't control closed session. I can't control open session.
You desire to make the majority of this board the bad guys. But no, the spotlight deserves to be focused back on you, and all your actions have shown that this has nothing to do with the kids. This has nothing to do with the kids. You're providing a quality. You're supposed to be providing a quality education. It has everything to do with saving your career, hence your behavior. If you wish to continue this pattern of behavior, this is not how a public servant should behave. This is a revenge recall, and we all can see the games that you're playing.
Okay, hold on real quick. Is there a Kelly F?
Yeah,
Kelly?
I think that was her.
Oh. No.
No, you can't do that.
Rosa.
Not everyone can be here. So she read a testimony from someone else who can't be here.
Hold on.
Speak to us here, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rosa's on deck, and then.
No, Rosa's at the podium.
I'm sorry. Rosa's at the podium. And then the next speaker after Rosa, since Kelly spoke on behalf of someone else.
Well, right. But you want to speak again? I'm sorry, we can't do that.
So there's certain parents that can't make it. So just like her sister in Texas. No, everybody can't come.
Hold on, Rosa. Hold on. Are we good with that?
No. No.
No.
Mr.
Okay.
He chose to use her time.
Excuse me. I think it's quite clear that people have to speak on behalf of themselves and not on behalf of someone else.
Sorry, I can't have you speak.
Based on that, Mr. Covert, since Kelly F. has presented a card, she can speak to her own.
No.
Okay. I just wanted clarity. Sorry about that, Kelly.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I have enough data.
Hold on real quick. Let me put that there. Hold on. On deck is retired Senator Gloria Romero.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My testimony?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You're on deck.
So first I want to start off because everyone's talking about test scores, right? So let's talk about test scores. How do you get into college? Do you guys know that? Everybody here knows that's gone to college, right? You have SATs, you have your entrance exams. You guys are talking about here.
Please speak to the board, please.
I would like to respectfully tell the room to be quiet so they don't talk over me.
Okay.
No, what did I say?
Please, just.
Folks, can we just temper it down and just be calm and respect each other's.
Yeah, professionals.
It stopped.
It stopped. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So we're talking about test scores, right? All these teachers here, they don't want to talk about test scores. They don't want to talk about the responsibility that they have had in this issue. We understand that there was a pandemic. We're third year into the pandemic. I don't understand how other districts have been able to actually score better than us at OUSD, and we were in the same pandemic. What excuse are you going to give? Let me give you some numbers, okay? So English learners, You guys are talking about they come and go, They're not even meeting, not even 50%. We're at 19.59% when it comes to the standard met for math. And this is from EdSource. How about, English? 29.69%. We had a lot of discrepancies. So we're talking about we want to help these people, but yet we have $3 million that is going to Arinda. We have extra after-school programs that we have, but where is that money going to? Do we see any of our test scores going up? And you're talking about test scores is just one number. But how are we going to measure the excellence? How are we going to measure for that Latino kid or other kids, no matter of the race, they're going to have to compete in the corporate world. Are you going to just pull a race card? No. They're going to have to compete with whites, with blacks, with Asians, with every kind. They're going to have to perform. And how are they going to be able to perform? They're not even going to get the interview if they cannot get into college. So if we don't even have, we're 50th in the nation when it comes to education, and we don't even have our kids at the minimum. So at that point, if they're not meeting their English language skills, the only one in our district that is, I'm sorry, but OCCA. And I don't know what they're doing, but I went ahead and asked because somehow they're able to help our English learners. Somehow they're able to help, and they're meeting 80% of the state testing. Somehow our English learners are 100% when it comes to the transition over. And I'm an ESL kid. Because I'm an immigrant, I went to the ESL. Hablo español perfectamente y no tengo problema decirlo. So I don't have a problem with saying it, that I was in the English learner program, but I was transitioned over. And when I was transitioned over, it was a process that was much faster than what we have now that they're basically testing out at 8th grade. So we have on math skills, we're like abysmal in math skills. In math, that's not English. That is, English learners are not even getting the minimum skills.
Wrap it up.
So I would like to say,
Go ahead.
I went to their open house and I spoke to 2 different high schoolers, and let me tell you what they said. So one is an AP student and one was a regular kid. And I said, what do you think, how do you think we can help these kids? And they said very clearly, they said they're not being taught by the time that we get here. So if they're not being taught by the time that they get here to be at the average.
President Ledesma, I'm going to ask, why are you not speaking the speaker?
Because I interrupted her at the beginning because I was calling.
She was interrupted.
He said it was 10 seconds that is interrupted.
Please just finish it up. Finish it up, please.
And you already went 10 seconds over the 3 minutes.
Please just finish it up.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the president. He can do it.
Okay, we just would like to say we as a community voted for change because we saw, that's why you have a 7% decline. We saw that our education level was dropping. At this point, I know Erickson's made it a political thing, but we want to bring it back to the education because we want to be able to have our kids to go to school, to get a good education, to be able to get into college, and to compete with those corporate jobs with everybody else. That is what we want, no matter the race.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm former Senator Gloria Romero, and in the last several weeks, I have received numerous calls. I've had meetings with parents because they know the work that I've done with parents and students in Orange County and other counties. I want to congratulate the new school board. Leading is important, and there's a courage that is needed, and I want to applaud you because I want to encourage you to know that parents out there have seen this data. And this is why I believe voters went to the polls to say, we can do better. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. If we put kids first, all of us succeed. The new school board, continue having the courage to lead and make the changes, because these are not just test scores. These are children's lives. These are their futures. And when you look at the data, and it's interesting what's in here, and it's even more interesting what was not included in this data, but it's all public information that you can find on the California State Department of Education website. If we look at Orange Unified, it breaks it down by all students. And nobody in this room should be proud that 45% of all Orange Unified School District students are not at grade level in reading, in English language arts. That is deplorable. And you know what? It's even more deplorable when you take a look at the data that's not here. And that's the race gap. And I don't want to hear about those kids and demographics and certain considerations. Every child can learn. And what we find is when you look at Latino children, for example, that jumps to 60%. How does a student dream of becoming an astronaut or a professor or a doctor? All of us should be concerned. And if we take a look at math, it's even worse, if it can get worse. All students in Orange Unified, 60% do not meet standards. That's why the voters voted for change. Again, too, if you take a look at the race gaps as well, African American, Latino students, English language learner students, all students are below standards there. So what does that mean overall? I challenge this board. Respect the parents, and so many parents are not in this room today. They don't pay dues to any organization to represent them, but they went to the polls and they voted. And if you're in the minority on this board, work with us. Work with us. The courage you had, and I didn't know the former superintendent, but this is not about one-year data. You go back to 2015 and before, it's year after year, decade after decade, the same failed statistics. I'm here because the parents asked, we want choices. I have a lot of ideas on choices. I thank the board. Continue having the courage to stand up for what brought you into this room today. Thank you.
Next on board is Cecilia Iglesias. Is she? Oh, there she is. Okay, while she's walking up, Gregory Pleasance would be on deck after.
Good evening, board members, President Ledesma, members of the public. My name is Cecilia Iglesias, and I am a member of the parent community. The reason I'm here is because parents from Orange Unified School District, especially the Latino parents, have reached out to me because I have experience in education. I'm a former school board member from the city of Santana, and then one of the things that really needs to be addressed here is the education gap. And I'm here to stand with the Latino parents because they feel that here within your organization, they don't have representation. Especially when we have individuals that really have, time after time when I've been attending these meetings, they're very rude, condescending to the Latino parents. And me having the opportunity to be part of this education system, me being an English language learner, and me being part of the education system for the past 10 years, I can see why a lot of parents don't want to come here. And like the Senator Romero said, our parents don't pay dues to be a member of a union, but our parents are taxpayers. And that's the reason why we need to stand up for them. Taxpayers are the ones that elect you. Taxpayers are the ones that pay your salaries. Taxpayers are the ones that, but that taxpayers pay your salary. So the thing is, we need to provide respect, and this is very unfortunate. Just the educators are the ones that are supposed to be setting an example, and it's so sad that parents don't feel represented. So I want to commend all of the board members. I believe you guys have a very tough job to do. You guys have an opportunity here, though, to really look at this data and give especially the Latino parents the resources that they need in order for them to be at standard. You know what standard means? That's just the bare minimum. And then if 70% of our kids here in this district are not meeting the minimum, that's a tragedy. So I'm here to say that parents had called on me. That's the reason why I'm here. They called me here to be here, and we are going to be present. We are going to support those board members who support our community. So know that if you are with the Latino parents, you are with the parents, we are going to be with you. So don't feel intimidated. I know this right here is just show. It's dog and pony show, but what really counts is the people who put you in office. So be thankful that you guys are there. You are there to support us. You are there to support the community. And our future generation of Latino kids are going to be forever grateful because you're going to send them on to be successful in this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. On deck is John Sanks.
Excuse me. I'm Gregory Pleasance. I have 2 kids at Jordan Elementary. Jordan's a great school. I'm here as a parent and as a voter, taxpayer. That was a great presentation by the California Policy Center. Thanks for that. So look, I don't have a problem with looking at test scores in context. There's probably no parent here who does. If this board were to say, we're going to take test scores, we're going to put them in context, we're going to look at the social determinants of health that inform those test scores, we're going to use test scores to channel resources and build up our public schools, to give our public school teachers more resources to meet students' needs as we identify them through analysis of those test scores, okay, we could have that conversation. Test scores are a piece of the puzzle. But that's not what's going to happen here. This board majority, Ledesma Ortega, Minor, and the other one who's not here, you're going to use these test scores in a cynical and shallow way to attack public schools, to attack teachers, to attack the education that our kids are receiving, because your political project is to dismantle public schools and to replace it with charter religious schools or no schools at all. Because the folks that you're speaking for are, like we just heard from the California Policy Center, what those folks are about is they're just protecting rich people who don't want to pay taxes for public schools. That is their bottom line agenda. So all of this smokescreen about wanting to do it for the kids, that's all just nonsense. That's all fakery. All right, that's their agenda. We can come together and have a conversation about test scores. As long as those test scores are put into context, as long as those test scores are used to identify gaps, as long as those test scores are used to build up and channel resources to our wonderful public school teachers, that we can get on board with. But what you're doing with your the board majority, with your political cynicism and your gross incompetence, there's no way that any of you had the statistical acumen to even understand what these scores mean. I mean, let's be real. You can't even run a meeting. So I reject out of hand this transparent political ploy, this misuse of data, this subversion of statistics that could otherwise be helpful. So I think I'm calling BS. It's not real, and I'll leave it at that.
And on deck is Michelle Weisenberg.
I'm also here as an Orange USD parent. I'm a taxpayer here. My daughter goes to an Orange USD elementary school. And, regardless of which side of this room I guess we've fallen on, we are all here because we love our kids. I'm taking a lot of time out of my day to be here to be an advocate for my child. And I appreciate everybody who's here doing that today. I commented on this item at the last meeting. It was somewhere approaching 1 a.m., I think, when we got to it, when it was called the Academic Audit Data Comparison. And I noted that the description at the time gave no indication of exactly what this was going to entail. So I want to give a big thanks out to the district staff who has posted this item onto our agenda packet for tonight, so we at least know what we're talking about. I hope that this board will consider posting the full agenda packet online like most public agencies in California do for transparency for us coming to comment. So As for the presentation material, so I'm not entirely clear, and I hope this will be clarified when the presentation starts tonight. Well, how did we pick what districts we're comparing against here? You know, one obvious omission to me was, you know, where's Anaheim's district? You know, I looked at their data, you know, see where do we stand on that. And on that, they had a 30% on hitting standards. We were hitting a 55. 20% hit math on the Anaheim district. I was seeing 40 on Orange. So I just want to make sure we're not cherry picking our data here and we're looking meaningfully, at least in our local region. I question the lack of trends that are presented here and how much of an interpretation you can make on the data tonight. You know, what's the movement of these scores been over the past 5 years? We can take it upon ourselves to look at this, but I wish it had been presented in this item for discussion tonight. Metrics are important, and they're not the only story. I think, you know, a telling aspect of this is how many kids were remote, how many, you know, COVID really threw a wrench in everything on this for this one data point we're focusing here when kids were returning back into school. We need to remember that. This just all makes it difficult to have a meaningful comparison. I'm hoping that the staff will give some context. I also note that there are no conclusions here, so I'm not entirely sure where we're going with this. I'm concerned that this presentation is being done as part of the academic audit and it's going to be used as a justification for keeping an assistant superintendent on administrative leave. I hope that's not the goal because there is useful if we're talking metrics. I just hope we're doing it appropriately. I just want to close that, you know, I've watched my daughter thrive growing through Orange Unified. Maybe everybody hasn't had the same experience that I have. She's done well, she gets good scores, and I'm confident that staying here, she's going to continue to thrive throughout public education. So thank you.
Rebecca Nelson on deck. Is there a Rebecca? Oh, okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle Weisenberg, and I think we should all thank Ceci Iglesias and the California Policy Center for paying for the entire campaign for John Ortega, Rick Ledesma, Madison Miner, and Angie Rumsey. There's a whole reason they're all connected. Anyway, first it was an academic audit that nobody could define or explain. Then it was an academic review, as Mr. Velasquez told me. Then it was just a report comparing test scores, a PowerPoint, if you will, with info pulled from the internet. None of these things are the curriculum and educational audit upon which Kathleen Carella's suspension is based. What is this accomplishing? There is so much context and nuance involved in interpreting test scores. It's not just numbers that you see in a chart. Public schools serve students at all levels, including English language learners, economically disadvantaged, special ed, foster youth, homeless youth, and hospital-bound youth. These populations can fluctuate from year to year. Comparing them as a group to other schools and districts whose populations may be wildly different or might also be in fluctuation is not an accurate way to gauge improvement or achievement. Comparing them to other schools could be ridiculous, but since somebody else opened the door to it, let's compare them to OCCA, which is what they are wanting us to do. For example, at OCCA, 215 kids took this test. Of those, 94% have parents who went to college, and almost 33% have parents who went to grad school. Next door at Esplanade, the school they like to compare it to, a public school serving every child in the community, 159 took the test. 73% have parents who went no further than high school. 31% have parents who didn't even graduate high school, and only 14% of the parents at Esplanade have any college at all. This affects the education of the child from the home. But let's break it down some more. At OCCA, the economically disadvantaged is 7%. At Esplanade, it's 91% economically disadvantaged. The English-only learners at OCCA is 96%. 51% of the students at Esplanade are English learners. How can you compare these two schools to each other? All of these things play into a student's education along with many, many others. And it's not just what's in the classroom. It's what's at home, it's what's in their environment, it's what's in their community, and it cannot be measured on a test. The only thing a student's test scores should be compared to are their own previous test scores to measure their own personal growth. A public school district's job is to meet each student where they are and guide them on their own path. Let's be clear, OUSD is not failing. A district is so much more than arbitrary test scores.
So, Rebecca, correct? Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to start in Spanish, and then I will.
Hold on, just real quick. Alex Broussard is on deck, so please.
Buenas tardes, mesa directiva. Esta noche se está comparando datos de nuestro distrito con otros distritos y I will do that in English in just a moment. Con otros distritos y quiero caucionar a todos. Una parte del cuento no es el cuento completo. Por ejemplo, un miembro de esta mesa directiva publicó unos datos por medios sociales en la red comparando a la Academia Jordan, donde yo soy maestra, con la Escuela de Panorama, diciendo un distrito pero dos educaciones. Una parte de la historia es que los alumnos en Panorama muestran mejores puntuajes alcanzando las metas del Estado. La implicación es que en la Academia Jordan no estamos haciendo nuestro trabajo. Esto no es el cuento completo. Casi 70% de los alumnos en Jordan viven bajo la línea de pobreza, pero menos del 20% de los alumnos en Panorama viven bajo la línea de pobreza. Más de 17% de los alumnos en Jordan tienen plan individualizado o participan en clases especiales debido a discapacidades de aprendizaje. Menos de 9% de los alumnos en Panorama tienen plan individualizado y Panorama no tiene educación especial. Cuando comparamos Jordan y Panorama, estás comparando peras con manzanas. La gran mayoría de las familias de Jordan batallan para sobrevivir, comparado con 17% de las familias de Panorama. El 70% de mis alumnos llegan a mi salón con preocupaciones y mucha necesidad. No es que no estoy haciendo mi trabajo, ni que les vale la educación a mis alumnos y sus familias. Es una negligencia profesional comparar Panorama y Jordan. El cuento completo es lo siguiente. Los alumnos en mi escuela del aprendices del idioma de inglés y de bajos recursos salieron más altos que los de Panorama. And I will say that in English. Good evening, board members. On tonight's agenda, we are comparing our district to other districts, and I must throw out a strong word of caution, and I will use an example to highlight how cautious we need to be. One of our board members recently posted on social media some scores comparing Jordan Academy, where I teach, to Panorama. The post read one district, but two educations. This story tells that Panorama outperformed Jordan in standards met, and the implication is that we at Jordan are not doing our jobs. This is not the whole story. 70% of our students live below the poverty line, whereas only less than 20% of Panorama students live below the poverty line. Over 17% of our Jordan students have IEPs, and we have special day classes serving those students. Panorama has no special day classes. You cannot compare the two schools. They are apples and oranges. The large majority of the families and students at Jordan, struggle to survive, whereas a small minority of Panorama students and families face that same struggle. 70% of my students come each day with worries and need. It's not that I'm not doing my job, nor that my students and their families don't care about education, but when 70% of the struggles to survive and has limited access to resources, it is malpractice for us to compare two very different schools. Panorama students when you look at socioeconomically disadvantaged, the poor kids, and the EL speakers. Disaggregate your data. Look at the numbers. Look at the whole picture and don't cherry pick it.
Is it Lori Kaylor? Okay. You're on deck after Mr. Broussard.
Members of the board, everything that she just said was completely spot on. One of the things that you don't know about me, you know that I'm a lawyer. You don't know that I have a bachelor's of science in mathematics as well. So I am uniquely qualified to speak to you about the statistics that are being put forward today. Statistical analysis is extremely important. Misuse of statistical analysis is downright dangerous. You know, there's a quote that's generally attributed to Mark Twain: lies, damn lies, and statistics. There's a reason for that. You can make the numbers say whatever you want when you have a confirmation bias and a predetermined outcome for what you want them to say. The numbers can be misrepresented, I'll say that charitably, in a number of ways. One, you can cherry pick the underlying data. You've heard tonight about what school districts are included and what school districts aren't included. That's extremely significant because demographics matter more than geographics. Demographics, comparing two school districts that look the same, is different than comparing two school districts that, for example, you have economically disadvantaged students versus non-economically disadvantaged students. Another way that you can misclassify and misrepresent with statistics is ignoring significant variables. You've got dual classification, dual immersion programs at some of these schools. That's completely ignored when you compare them like they're the same thing. We had a worldwide pandemic. You guys might have heard of it, COVID-19. Why does that matter? Because the tests that you're using to analyze these things measure growth. You're measuring growth in the middle of a global pandemic. Why don't you use statistically significant data instead? Compare it to like school districts and actually come out with statistically relevant analysis. You know, you could do this if you hired, for example, an outside company that had statisticians that have a background in actually comparing numbers and making them look like they belong next to each other. Now, because it doesn't seem to matter to you whether I talk about the statistical analysis or not, I want to circle back to my last speech and let you know that that letter that I showed you, those redactions, those are illegal. We're going to get the entire document, and we're going to get the rest of all of the documents. We're going to get the cell phone records that show the serial communication, and you will be held liable for a Brown Act violation.
Wasn't going to do me any good.
Hello. I just want to give my support for the academic audit. This Orange Unified School District is unacceptably low in its test scores, and that has been before the pandemic. I'm not blaming teachers. There are many teachers who are very frustrated and intimidated, but they feel like there's less time for academics because there are so many programs that are taking up their time. There are many parents who have been intimidated and ignored because they were disgusted with some of the things that are going on in the schools in the curriculum, the books that were inappropriate for their young children, the materials in the textbooks that are hating cops, for example. This is long overdue to have whatever you want to call it, whether it's an audit or a review or whatever the terminology is of the curriculum. This is not hating on teachers. This is, what are we doing here? We want our kids to succeed, and I just want to give my support for you. I know that you're not up here for the money. It is not a job where you make a lot of money being up here. You're getting a lot of hate, and I just applaud you for your courage for doing what is right. It's not always popular to do what is right, but I applaud you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Chu? Betty Chu? Oh, there she is. And then Darshan is on deck.
A board member was recently quoted as saying, quote, "I will not let this district's reputation be destroyed by a group of extremists that are coming in to tear down the work that we've been doing as parents and active members of the community for the last decade and a half. Ms. Hansen was a superintendent for more than half of that last decade and a half. A cursory review of the district comparison results report not only validates the board's action related to the firing of the superintendent, as I stated earlier, but necessitates a conclusion that the, quote, district's reputation, unquote, has already been, quote, destroyed, unquote, and compels leadership under a newly elected board majority and a new superintendent. Consistently in each of the categories for all students and English learner students, OUSD has underperformed in each of the categories. However, some of the people here say that is not relevant. Assuming that is not relevant, it certainly is relevant that the percentages of students who do not meet the standards or exceed standards is very minimal. And also, the ones that are underperforming have a very high rate of failure. So nationally, the school district only ranked in the lower 1/3 of the nation's schools. No one, not even a board member, should want to continue OUSD's failing performance reputation. It has been proven time and time again that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, not different in education. Can we all agree, regardless of our sexual and political preferences in education and regardless of our ethnicity, can we all agree that all children in this district deserve a better academic preparation to enable them to compete and succeed in the future? I am sure that each of the board members want the students to succeed. That requires a complete audit so we can begin positive reform. If we don't know what's wrong, then we can't have a program going forward. If the acrimonious vitriol energy reflected in these last 2 months should be channeled into positive actions in cooperation with the board to improve the academic curriculum and education experiences. And if we all the district's failing performance reputation. Don't waste time, money, and other precious resources that deters that effort.
Darshan. Next on board is Florida Sheldon.
Good evening, board. So sometimes when my kids are arguing with me, I remind them that they are doing a little bit of gymnastics. So I'd like to point out some gymnastics I've been noticing. 20 years on the board, and yet we're blaming someone who's had 2, 4, and 6 years on the board for our test scores. So let's point that out. Sorry. Pick a lane. I don't care which one it is. So onto my speech. So not anymore, but previously in OUSD, I was a substitute teacher. And as you all know, I also really like to do research. So when it came time to pick a school for my children to attend, I did a lot of research, and then I used my being a substitute. I subbed on a lot of campuses, and I viewed it during my break time as an opportunity to look at the schools and to choose something that I thought was a really good fit for my kids. So for my youngest 2, I picked El Medina. And I have to say, even though I like data, I didn't choose it because of its test scores. I chose it because it was a kind, inclusive school where the teachers cared about every single student, and they cared about them on all levels. The kids cared about each other too, which was kind of the winning thing. Anyways, I just want to say that these scores aren't a true reflection of how successful our students are learning. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to brag one more time because he's away at school and he can't catch me. But I'm also at the same time going to confess a failure. My 2022 posted a near perfect score on the ACT in the spring of 2021 in the math section. Yay. about 5 weeks later, about 5 weeks before that, he failed the SBAC test in math. I'll admit it, right? So, yes, I wanted to point out that my son is an economics and engineering dual major at one of the most sought after colleges in the country. And so he failed the SBAC test his junior year. He had tested in the top percentiles of this test for years, and on that day, he was not adequate. So I just wanted to point that out. Sorry, skipping around. You, the board, are determining that he has been failed by his curriculum. There we go, that was my point. According to that test, he was failed by his curriculum, but I want to say that his amazing teachers prepared him for much more important things. So I wanted to go on. You know what would be a better assessment if we as a district are failing our students? We should ask graduates. Graduates. We have one of the highest graduation rates in the county. That's preparing kids for being the next level. Shoot. Anyways, look, success looks different for every child in our district. Why are you using one test on one day to measure it?
Is there Florida? Or Florida? Sheldon? No? Okay. Karen Tadros? And then on deck is Megan Cossier. Did I say that right?
Okay. So hello, for those who don't know me, my name is Karen Tadros. Some of Instagram accounts that are supported by one of the board members have called me out as a liar, as a rogue agent of the teachers union. They posted my information all to see, they Googled me. But more importantly, what they forgot to state was that I've been a parent for 17 years to my son who attends high school in OUSD. And I'm here tonight to discuss 5A, academic data comparison. I find this presentation askew. Why are we compared to just Irvine and Garden Grove and Placentia, Linda? Where's Tustin Unified? The sister district that's far more similar in size and demographics. I don't know, maybe it didn't fit your agenda. The board majority and certain parents who have spoken tonight are hyper-focused on SBAC scores. I want you to know that those test scores are just one snapshot of your child's acquisition of grade level curriculum. Furthermore, your student is just more than a test score. I encourage parents to look at students' work portfolio. This would include growth, rather than just the state test to determine growth. Look at test scores, look at classroom performance, exams, quizzes, classwork, projects, homework. Look at other measures the district uses like DIBELS, dynamic indicators of early literacy skills, or district benchmarks. Also, if your kid's involved in activities to make them more well-rounded, like the CTE pathway my son's involved in, school sports, the dual immersion program, school ambassadorship, ASB, PALS, visual and performing arts, to name a few. All of these are better measurements on whether your child is succeeding than one test taken on one day at the end of the year. I listen to the naysayers who say these tests are important. They'll have to take SATs. Well, not anymore, they don't. Most colleges do not require SATs for admittance. Harvard is discontinuing that requirement. And entrance exams are used to determine placement classes in college, not whether they'll get into college. You're relying on these test scores to justify your abhorrent actions and lack of transparency over the last couple months. They're taking a snapshot of our students to justify mismanagement of millions of taxpayer dollars and firing our superintendent, and as rationale for subsequently thrusting the district into turmoil. Millions of tax dollars would have better been spent, I have a loud voice, I'm a teacher, lowering class sizes, hiring bilingual instructional test scores does not equate to an academic or curricular audit. You need to be transparent on what the process is for this audit, why it's necessary, who will be conducting it, and what results you're looking for, or again, you're just wasting our money.
Is there a Megan? Is there a Megan? No? Scott Resnick?
Oh, she had to leave. Megan had to leave.
Okay. And then on deck is Kathy Moffitt.
I guess my resume wasn't good enough, but maybe next time. Good evening, board. My name's Scott. I'm a parent of a student at Jordan Academy. Jordan is a wonderful school with amazing teachers and amazing programs. My wife and I, as parents, chose it for our son. In choosing a school, we recognize that test scores were only one factor of many that determines a school's quality. In fact, in our thorough research for primary programs, we learned that students learning a second language often score lower on standardized tests in elementary school, only to outperform later in their educational journeys. This in itself is why test scores shouldn't even be used as a metric. But for the lazy or uninterested, I can understand why this is all the 4 of you or 3 of you care about. So I'm here today to question why you're so focused on a single piece of data and not taking a holistic view of each school. Where's the data on 6th graders who enter middle school knowing how to code? Where's the data on high school graduates being fluent in Mandarin or Spanish? Where's the data on 8th graders taking AP tests in a foreign language? Because it doesn't fit your narrative, you'll never compile that data. Just like you refuse to compare OUSD against Newport Mesa Unified or Anaheim Elementary School or high school districts, or why you cherry-picked Irvine Unified, one of the highest performing districts in the country, because it fits your narrative. Can I ask, is any of your data normalized? Did you factor in any margins of error? What is the level of statistical significance? I'm not a statistician or a mathematician, but I know what questions to ask when I see bad data, and all I saw in the materials this evening was bad data. I also must ask, is this the long-awaited fraudit that you have been promising for 2 months? Because the agenda doesn't mention the audit. You haven't been transparent in telling the public how the audit will be conducted. Couldn't even be called an audit if a third party isn't involved? Did the data comparison replace the fraudit? If so, I hope the terms of Ms. Carella's suspension were changed. It would look awfully suspicious and financially irresponsible for the district to be paying her to be on administrative leave pending a curriculum and educational audit if you moved the goalposts and only conducted a comparison. This was a long way of saying that despite your goals, this data doesn't scare me away from public education. Even public education that is being intentionally broken by a morally bankrupt leadership. Choosing a school based on the quality of the test scores is about as useful as choosing a school based on the quality of the school board. That is not why we or other parents choose schools. And I'd like to add, it would be irresponsible for any parent to choose a school simply because it can prepare their child for a test. Can you give me a few minutes? I have some rights. I want to be heard. All right, I'll just yell. No, we and every other parent in this room chose our school because we know OUSD teachers, every teacher that's here, every teacher that is watching, they care about our kids and they can and will prepare our children for life beyond a simple test.
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Kathy Moffitt. I'm a parent of 3 graduates of Orange Unified School District. I live in this district. I was on your board for 22 years. At your last meeting, I listed all the many achievements and honors earned by the Orange Unified School District. One of them was the important honor of having met and exceeded last year's achievement levels in all areas measured on the California Department of Education dashboard on school district performance. All areas improved. I commented that taking students from where they are and teaching them effectively such that they improve is the essence of education. It's the goal that every school and district strive for. During those remarks, and in particular during that portion of my comments, I noticed that Interim Superintendent Velasquez was nodding his head in obvious agreement. Could it be that Mr. Velasquez's recent sudden departure is his ultimate message to you that you are not focused on what really counts in our school district? The focus must be on students and their continuous progress and continuous improvement in all areas that are important to their education. This is imperative. To criticize our students and teachers, to fail to acknowledge their excellent work and progress, even in the worst of circumstances, such as we have been experiencing, is not only unfair, it is demoralizing to them, misleading to the community, and counterproductive to progress. Attacking our school district is a cynical, thinly veiled rationale for your rash and ill-advised board actions taken in secretive meetings, called in such a way so as to deprive the community of knowing what you are doing, probably in violation of the Brown Act, California's open meetings law, requiring that the public's business be done in public, not in secret, not in illegal phone calls or illegal emails. Observers can only conclude, even from this presentation tonight, that you are still pitifully searching for a more palatable, politically correct explanation for your mean-spirited, ill-advised, destabilizing actions of firing our excellent superintendent, Dr. Gunmarie Hansen, and putting on leave her able assistant superintendent, Kathleen Carella. These are the leaders who made possible OUSD's enviable gains. We are a district of excellence, and our performance is improved by the work of excellent educators. They deserve our respect and support.
Lynn Marie.
Hello, I'm Lynn Marie Frediani. Been up here many times. I am, again, to tell you, I'm a graduate of OUSD. I worked for OUSD as a substitute teacher for almost 20 years. All 4 of my children have graduated from Orange Unified School District. My 4 children went to El Medina High School, and I can tell you all 4 of them did great on standardized testing at times, and all 4 of them did terrible. My son seemed to be the one that was had the most thought into all of this. It goes back to elementary school, where they did accelerated reading, and all of a sudden one year he dropped 4 years in accelerated reader. And I'm like, gee, what happened? He goes, Mom, did you know that if you do really bad on that test, you don't have to get as many points for reading that year, and you get an A? They figure it out. They all do it. I also want to say, I am sure the staff member that presented, that did this report that's being presented tonight, did it very well in the parameters that they were given. I'm not anything against that, but you cannot base everything off of a test score. My concern with this is you're bringing this up. We all know that, we're supposed to do the academic audit, et cetera. Is this part of the academic audit? Is this the start of it? Are we backing into a way that we can fire her? So by proving things like this, it doesn't prove anything with it. My other concern is that, we're doing all of this. We know who financed, it was brought up earlier, who financed the majority's campaigns, the California Policy Center. We also know that the California Policy Center is the backer of Orange County Classical Academy. And the Orange County Classical Academy, location right there on near Spring Street, right next door to what school? Esplanade. Esplanade keeps being attacked for their test scores. Geographically, it's pretty convenient for OCCA to be attacking Esplanade. Next thing we know, what are they going to ask for? You know, are we going to close Esplanade and, oh, look, we want a new charter school at Esplanade? That is what it seems. You know, we can go back through the whole thing of what the board has done. Let's see, it started in December. We're going to eliminate all holding places for special meetings. We hold a special, and get rid of all of them. Board majority votes on that. We then, have a special meeting January 5th, just a few weeks later. Have it on that. It just seems we fire our superintendent. There's a process. We see where you're going. It is pretty transparent, and you guys are tearing apart Orange Unified School District step by step with it, and it needs to stop. So with the with the test scores and that, they show nothing, and we see where you guys are going with this. Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll address district presentation will be provided regarding academic data comparison between school districts. Mr. Abercrombie?
Good evening, Board President Ledesma, school board members, executive cabinet, staff, and community. My name is Lisa Green, and I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I am here today to share a presentation created by Mr. Velasquez for the board. He has asked me to present it to you tonight. What you will be seeing tonight is a snapshot of the state Smarter Balanced Assessment data. Let me say that this is just a starting point. If there is any additional data that you would like to see, we can provide that to you at a later time. Just a little background first. The California Smarter Balanced Assessment data that we'll be looking at is the results from the spring of 2022. The tests form part of the state's California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, also known as CASP. The Smarter Balanced Assessment system utilizes computer-based tests and performance tasks that allow students to show what they know. They are end-of-the-year comprehensive assessments based on Common Core state standards. Students in grades 3rd through 8th and 11th participate in the ELA and math assessments. Some parents choose to opt their students out of these assessments. The 2021-2022 Smarter Balanced assessments were based on an adjusted blueprint. Thus, they are not the same as the Smarter Balanced assessments pre-COVID. They are shortened versions. The computer adapted portion was reduced by about 50% compared to what it was pre-COVID. These test results are just one piece of information about how students are doing in school. Together with other measures of student progress, they can be reviewed for future instructional decisions. First, we will start with a graphic of the 2021-22 Smarter Balanced Assessment results for English, Language Arts, and Literacy. This chart is for all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 who took the Smarter Balanced ELA assessment in the spring of 2022. Students were assessed in the areas of reading, writing, speaking and listening, and research and inquiry. OUSD is on the left, and then we see the neighboring districts of Garden Grove, Irvine, Placentia Yorba Linda, Santa Ana, and Tustin. Student results are shown in one of 4 groups. Standard not met, which we see in orange, standard nearly met, which we see in yellow, standard met, which is green, and standard exceeded, which is blue. Next, we have the 2021-2022 Smarter Balanced Assessments results for math. Students are tested in the areas of concepts and procedures, problem solving, communicating reasoning, and modeling and data analysis. Again, similar to the last chart, OUSD is on the left with neighboring districts on the right, with green being standard met and blue being standard exceeded. Then we move into ELA results for our English learners subgroup. An English learner is a student whose primary language is a language other than English, as indicated on the home language survey that is filled out when first enrolling in a California public school, and who upon initial assessment by the English Language Proficiency Assessment of California is determined to be eligible for support with English language development due to their level of English language proficiency. So again, OUSD results are on the left and neighboring districts on the right. And here we see the mathematic results for our English learner subgroup. The last set of data that we are going to be looking at is for our students with disabilities subgroup. Here we see the English language arts results. First, I want to share that it is highly complex to compare outcomes of students with disabilities with other districts' outcome data, as there are many variables which affect the performance. For example, 21% of our students with disabilities are also English learners, which means there is a variety of needs. Also, I wanted to let you know that in the 2021-2022 year, we did not meet the 95% participation rate requirement for student with disabilities. When you do not meet the participation requirement, the state counts how many students you are away from meeting that requirement, and then they add in the lowest possible score for that many students. Which means that for us last year, 40 lowest possible scores were added to our ELA data, and 49 lowest possible scores to our math data, because we had too many students with disabilities opt out of participating in the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and thus did not meet the minimum participation requirement. Here is our math student Smarter Balanced Assessment data for students with disabilities. One last thing I would like to add about our student with disability population in OUSD is that when compared to their general education peers, OUSD students with disabilities have a smaller achievement gap on both ELA and math assessments than Garden Grove, Irvine, Placentia Yorba Linda, and Tustin districts. Also noteworthy is that 66% of students with disabilities do receive the majority of their instruction with general education teachers in a least restrictive environment, which further speaks to the narrow gap between the performance of many of our students with disabilities and our general education students. And that completes my presentation.
Okay, any discussion, questions? Board members?
I have some, Mr. Ledesma.
Okay.
I kind of want to know, like, the reason we had this presentation, mainly because we went over this in the October meeting. So, like,
This exact report?
Yes.
Just like this?
yes.
Irvine, Santa Ana?
Well, it's a part of it, and it's public information. So,
Right.
I want to know why we're comparing it ourselves to other districts.
I see it as just base data, base data to work with. From here, we can go into more specifics. A lot of the speakers spoke about going through this over the years, getting more specific, maybe break it down by high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and again, it's just base data. And then from that base data, we can go off into other areas of studying what's happening.
Okay, so you're saying that the data that we have here, because the SBAC wasn't conducted for 2 years, is the baseline for our district to then see where we can head from here?
It's just indicators. That's all it is. Okay. I know everybody was speaking about these are not percentages to live by and die by and all that kind of thing. But one thing I will say that's very, very important is that no matter what's said about this data or question this data or the anecdote stories about why not to pay attention to these numbers, bottom line, when somebody is coming to this community and looking to buy a home or somebody that is trying to sell a home, there are tens of thousands of taxpayers out there that are told and asked about how are the schools. And some of those home buyers are looking at this data, unfortunately. okay? But they don't have an educator standing with them and saying, well, you got to consider this data or that data, or you got to consider the makeup of the group. And no, that home buyer, and again, it's tens of thousands of taxpayers that are relying on us to have the best data possible out there of how successful these schools are. And I'm sorry, but that's the market. And so I use this, as I said. Now from here, let's take a look at other, we can request other cuts of this information. That's my thoughts.
I also think that's why we have a communications department to share to the community how well our district's doing, and we can discuss the areas that we need for growth. Because if we're communicating to the taxpayer, like a potential home buyer, that there's a narrative that could be shared, whether it's on our websites or social media, that there's a story to tell in addition to just test scores. Right?
I don't know what you're asking me here, but we need to look at the why on this, at the why. That's all this is to look at this information. I mean, these scores, I mean, I'm concerned. I'm really concerned. And so I'm going to, that's from this, I bring it to the board to start saying, okay, what are we going to do about this?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we definitely should, especially since we can't deliberate outside of this room, and now we're in a public session and we can have these discussions about how our district's doing. And so I guess we can, have that conversation about what are our strengths-based models and what is our methodology of analyzing how our district's doing, and can we get like a whole picture of what's happening in our district. And I'm open to hear from other board members about how we collect that data, in addition to just a quantitative method. I would love a mixed method where we can also get narratives from students so that we get to hear from them, like how they're doing.
Well, there's quite a few things that you've said there. I think, I'm gonna continue along. I mean, I'm gonna ask for this kind of information, and the next level of this information. This is the entire district. Maybe now we break it down a little more. If you want some of these other type of studies, then that's something for you to kind of define and work with Ed Services.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
But right now, I just want to get feedback from.
Well, I
from
also
everyone
want to
there.
get down to the why. So I think that's a way to
Right.
reach that why.
Right. Anyone else?
I have some questions on the presentation itself. It's my understanding, Lisa, Ms. Green, you said that Velasquez put together this presentation and you're presenting it he created this presentation, correct? The data that we had?
He gave the presentation to me. I did not create it, but I believe there was support from our assessment department to create the presentation.
Okay, can I ask who picked the school districts that are listed?
I am not positive on that. I'm assuming that he picked those school districts that are listed, but I cannot confirm that.
Do you think that board members directed him to pick these school districts?
I do not know. He did not share that with me.
For me, definitely not.
I'm just asking.
Well, you're making assumptions there.
No, I just want clarification because there seems to be some districts that are missing that we could have compared ourselves to. I have information like in Newport Mesa. They have more of a similar demographics, and I don't understand why they weren't included. Why wasn't Anaheim included? I know their demographics are a little different, but you included demographics of other areas that were not really related, so.
Well, we can do that in the next run, next go around here. I'm not, this is what was picked out, and what was picked out here,
So we're going to rely on a superintendent from Idaho to pick the districts?
No, we're going to rely on a board member that just suggested, why didn't we pick this, why didn't we pick that? That's what we're going to rely on. So the next iteration of the report can...
So we're going to do this again?
If that's what you want.
Well, I would like to
Well,
say
why are you
that
asking
it
then?
was actually done in September, October, as Ms. Page mentioned. We did get this information. In fact,
Was
I think it was
Newport
Dr.
Mesa
Lynn.
in there and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Lynn put together data, and I believe that there was a plan called Regaining the Edge, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about Regaining the Edge?
Regaining the Edge is our work on with our different schools. So it's our goal setting, it's our analysis of our data. So each school site comes in, and the administration comes in and meets with Dr. Lynn and some of our directors in Ed Services to review all aspects of their test score data.
Okay.
And to have discussions and to come up with a plan and goals for moving forward and for supporting student success in our schools.
So I just want to be clear. So Dr. Lynn met with every single principal to
Correct.
discuss their test scores and how they can improve it.
Yes, Dr. Lynn and some of the executive directors met with every single principal.
So we
and-
were on the path of trying to improve our scores, identify where we can improve and growth, and talking about
next steps.
Yeah.
And then looking for district trends that we can support as a district to support our school sites with future success.
Thank you.
And I've seen that dashboard in Dr. Lynn's office. Every school has a unique display of what their next steps are.
Oh, is that that big? That is an amazing dashboard that she created to track every school. Can I also ask, so the CAS scores are just one data point.
One data point.
What else are we looking at as data points?
Okay. So we look at some different data points. So when you talk about state data, we also look at our graduation rates. We look at our A through G rate. We also look at other local data measurements like our iReady assessment data, which we assess kids in kindergarten through 8th grade in both ELA and math. And then that assessment data also helps us create a diagnostic plan of where they need extra support and where they're going to. And then starting last year, we began creating common assessments, curriculum assessments.
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
So iReady is actually individually student-driven. So it's
Yes.
every student.
Has their own individual path.
Okay.
And so what that does is it puts every student on their own individual path, but then it also allows the teachers to see the data, and then teachers can use that data and pull lessons and pull groups of students that have similar needs to help accelerate the learning.
Right.
Because our goal is to accelerate learning, and the goal is to reach their stretch growth goal, which means more than 1 year of growth in 1 year. And so we've been doing a lot of professional development around it. Our teachers endlessly look at the data. They make plans for their students. They plan their instruction based on the data. And we just started implementing this district-wide last year for K-8, and so we're seeing a lot of growth with that. And then the next thing we're working on is curriculum alignment assessments. So teachers spent countless hours looking at the SBAC item specifications and the blueprints to really then look at our standards and really decide what is the rigor of the expectation of the standards. And then our teachers created assessments based on those item specifications and the question types of SBAC to create these assessments based on key target standards for our students. And so we've been implementing those since last year and revising and updating those. We just have some pilot schools, so only about half of our schools are doing that right now as we try to pilot that and really get that into a really concrete process. And then these teachers are also meeting 4 times a year to have data reflection sessions on the data where they look at those students and they look at the ones that are like right at the border, like maybe they're getting, 3 out of the 5 questions on a standard correct. What can we do? What common agreements can we make as a school site, as a grade level, as a department that is going to help push our students forward? And then the teachers meet and they plan together based on that. And they create how can we push our high achieving students higher, and how can we scaffold and support our other students to meet the rigor of the standards? Because we want to push up all of our students to that grade level standard.
So
I will say that during my visits to a lot of the classrooms, we've seen iReady in action, and I think that is an awesome program. I've talked to parents, and parents really like it because they can monitor their children at home as well, and they can compare their growth themselves as well. And when talking to students doing iReady while we were in the classroom, I asked them how do they like it, and a lot of them like it because they can do it on their own as well.
Ms. Green, you said that we've been using iReady for about a year, so we started last academic year.
So some schools have been using it for longer, but then we came to the conclusion that we wanted to make it a district-wide K-8 program. So the district is funding and supporting that rather than the school sites. And then that allows us to focus a lot of professional development around it and a lot of our support from our district to really support our teachers and our principals and administrators with using that data to really drive instruction and to really help push students forward.
So many of our students were using it for the first time coming back from learning from home, distant learning, different things like that. And so teachers were able to see the difference between some students who may have, had the quote unquote learning loss. So maybe they were a grade behind than where they should be. But now that you have over a year of data, would you say that students have grown and closed that gap from where they started when they first started with iReady compared to now?
We're seeing a lot of really good growth with the iReady, and we're fine-tuning it and really pushing our lessons past. Our teachers are really working hard to track that and to ensure that our students are passing a certain amount of lessons every week. And so we have seen a lot of improvement with that.
Ms. Green, you are mostly in gen ed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I've heard a lot from some parents tonight, and that's amazing that your students are thriving so well. I have heard from a lot of special needs parents, from a lot of English learner parents, and some teachers who have gotten kids in their class that maybe have special needs, and that's kind of affecting their ability to stretch themselves pretty thin, working with one group of kids versus the other, and not having the amount of support that they need from instructional assistants. And so I feel like there's a disconnect between the numbers, specifically in the classes, of the ratio of teachers to students, as well as our assistants that are in the classes. Would you agree with that?
I think that's a topic that's not pertaining to the numbers here.
Well,
You're asking her
I think
about.
it ties into when you have distractions in the classroom. When you have distractions in the classroom, that affects the testing.
I'll speak.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I was just going to
Allow her
say,
to
I requested that we have a special education presentation in April.
Well, let me
and so maybe we
finish
Please,
talking to Ms.
please,
Green, and
yeah.
then you can talk again.
I was just going to
Thank
say,
you.
can each board member speak for themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, have respect, people. Jeez.
So in that regard, I just feel like our numbers in our classes, from what I've heard from teachers who have said they're not special ed teachers, they're gen ed teachers, and they're getting a lot of special needs kids in their classes, wouldn't this affect how they're able to maybe best teach to their students? And in that regard, wouldn't it be best to look at the numbers of the ratio of special needs kids to gen ed kids, as well as the instructional assistant and the teacher, to maybe make our levels in our classes, our numbers in our classes, better adjusted for the betterment of all the students in their classes?
I can't speak to the numbers because I don't have that data in my head right now. I can just speak to, as general education teachers, we are taught to meet the needs of a wide variety of students, whether it is advanced learners or students with disabilities. And so one of the things that we did do this year to try to support our teachers with meeting those needs is on our November 8th PD Day for our secondary teachers, we gave trainings about meeting the needs of diverse learners and how there's certain scaffoldings and certain things that you can do in a class to really help support students of all levels be successful. But when it comes to the numbers, I can't really speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Erickson?
Thank you for, I'm sure you were put on the spot having to give the report of something you didn't write. Was there any collaboration, do you know, for this? Am I speaking into this? Was there any collaboration on this report with any of the directors or principals or anybody else, or was it just Mr. Velasquez that wrote this report? This presentation?
Yeah, I believe our assessment department gave the data that was requested of them.
So was that Christina Lynn?
Yes, Dr. Lynn's department.
And when you say gave the assessment information, do you mean pulled these off the internet?
It's all public data, yes.
So this is every single thing that's in this PowerPoint is pulled off the internet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
Okay, there isn't anything
That's not public.
that's been analyzed, in other words. This is just, so the way I see it is this is one snapshot, one test, post-COVID, and that's all it is. So it's not telling us what happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. It's just one snapshot of one test in the spring of 2022, right?
It's the Smarter Balance assessment data from the spring of 22 for ELA and math.
Okay, so with that one and only data point, obviously when you're going in and you're talking to principals and analyzing data for your students and trying to make a plan going forward, is it common, like for instance, let's just say Canyon High School, they get their test scores back and they make a determination on their own as a school, right, how they're going to address their student population and maybe increase their test scores, right? Does that ever involve them taking their test scores and comparing it to Irvine?
I can only speak to my own personal experience of being a teacher on a site, and no, we didn't usually compare it to other districts. We usually looked at and compared it to previous data and then other data that we had to get the full picture.
So you would be taking not just data as it compares to Irvine or Placentia or Belinda, you would be taking Canyon student data as it compares to Canyon student data.
We always like to focus on our students and our specific students' needs.
Okay. So when we're talking about the iReady data, that's something that's showing individual improvement. So we're trying to meet children, students where they are at the level that they're at, and then we want to measure their growth as they go through the system.
Correct.
Okay. So we're not measuring that person's, we're not deciding how much that child has grown, that individual child has grown by comparing them to another child in Irvine, right?
As teachers, we see each child as each child, so we look at their own personal data.
Right. They're not just a number. They're their own little person, right? I mean, I think we know that as parents. You know, I have 2 kids, and they couldn't be more opposite and learned completely differently. And, you know, one got really great test scores, and the other one didn't. So I think you mentioned that this is just a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And were you told that, or is that something that you're just assuming?
Well, data in itself, when you look at one piece of data, that's just a starting point. There's always multiple measures to look at. But Mr. Velasquez did say that this was a starting point.
Okay, so when he gave it to whomever, you now, he said, this is just a starting point. This is not something that we're going to draw some grand conclusions from this one single data point.
That was my understanding.
Okay. Is every single English learner the same from one to another and one to another district?
No, English learners have a variety of different needs. A lot of it is dependent on whether they're fluent in their home language. So, I mean, I used to be the coordinator of English learners here in Orange Unified. And so, you know, you really have to look at a lot of other factors, but that proficiency in their L1, as we call it, their primary language, has a really big say on how quickly they acquire the language. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of other factors too, you know, depending on whether the language they're coming from has a, you know, Roman Greco alphabet like ours, and different things like that can have different findings on an English learner's needs. But just like every student, everybody has their own needs.
Right, and because I think about, I mean, I do school tours, and I was at one the other day, and there were 3 brand new students from a Middle Eastern country, a war-torn country, who didn't speak any English, so they come to us as that. Another school I was at had a young child that just came from Guatemala, and it was a remote village out in Guatemala where we didn't even have an interpreter that spoke the dialect. So those two kids aren't necessarily going to be the same as another child who's an English learner. They may have different challenges and they may be on a different timeline, right? I mean, they can all learn, but they just may be on a different timeline and may need different supports, right?
Correct.
So there's no one size fits all. I think we all agree with that. Does this data compare at all how we compare to other districts in terms of the COVID drop? So in other words, how much we dropped during COVID versus how much another district dropped? Does this give any of that?
This does not provide that, no.
Is that data available though?
That data is available.
Do you know how we did in terms of how much we dropped in comparison to other districts?
By memory, we are kind of in the middle.
Okay. So everybody was roughly somewhere between 2%, and I think Laguna was 10% in math, but we're all kind of in this same realm between 2 and 5%, right? And those were expected COVID drops.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you really quickly, something you said stuck out at me, and you said that for these tests, we have to have 95% of our students take the test. So if we have, so do you know, for instance, how many special education students took the math test, for instance?
I don't have that number right at hand, but it is easy to find in that it is on the dashboard. It will tell us how many.
But you said that we had 49 kids that opted out.
We were below the 95th percentile or percentage for participation rate by, I believe it was 40 students in ELA and 49 in math. Here comes Sue.
49. Sorry. So just to help Lisa out, the special ed participation rate on the statewide assessments did impact our scores. So once again, you know, if it's below 95, we talked about how it impacts. We're penalized by the difference in the participation under this 95% threshold, which for us, for students with disabilities, was 3.14%, or that was 49 students, student scores total, who were added into that testing cohort with the lowest possible score.
So just so I get this straight, I want to make sure I understand this. So 3.14, is that what you said?
Correct, 3.14%.
Were put in standard not met,
averaged
even
into
though they never
the students'
took the test.
Correct. And so for math, that equated into a 0.35% deduction from the overall score. And additionally, these 49 lowest possible scores, which were students who opted out, are included in that orange band, which is the lowest band of the standards not met.
And was this post-COVID, was there a higher percentage of students that opted out?
Correct.
In comparison to other years?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's a really interesting thing. I didn't realize that. So we basically get dinged if we don't have 95%, and
yeah,
dinged
that's
in a way
threshold.
that's okay. But dinged in a way that it's not that it doesn't count; it's
it
that it's
negatively
counted as low.
counts.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. And I think Andrea asked about the Regaining the Edge program because I was curious about why we were getting this chart off the internet again, because we did have a whole report on this in October, and it set forth exactly all this, that what the summary results were, what the good portions of it are, what the bad portions of it were, and what the plans were in place. So is there any, did anybody talk to you about changing the Regaining the Edge program? Or, I mean, has that even been discussed?
No, it has not been discussed yet.
Okay,
Not that I know of. Maybe it has been discussed, just not with me.
So nobody came to you with this one data point and said, we got to scrap the Regaining the Edge program?
No.
Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Are we looking at all of OUSD, or are we going to start focusing on each school site, since that's kind of where the discussion's going? as a researcher, I would never study something that had an overabundant amount of variables. And so if we are going to hone in on the status of our district and then looking at specifically at our different schools, and if we are going to use the dashboard that has many different indicators in addition to the data that was presented today, then we do need to look at social determinants of health and all of these other topics that are impacting our students every day.
Question? Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Ortega?
Well, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
You know, the data is, as it says, you know, it's just a so-called snapshot. First and foremost, I want to preface my comments, and for me personally, this data, to me, is no reflection at all on any of the teachers in our district, at all. This is more of a reflection on looking at different programs and those that we can then provide, as I mentioned last board meeting, how one program was not wanted in this district. From the teachers union to the teachers themselves did not want that program. It was just another program that was pulling them away from the actual, as the teachers say, learning loss in the classroom. They're being pulled away and then provided by a substitute. And so, to me, this isn't a reflection on the teachers at all whatsoever, and I know a lot of them. What it's more of is, how then do we provide that support to them? What does that look like? Can I best disaggregate that information than the teacher in the classroom? No. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. But if I, as up here as one of the policymakers, provide the resources for the teachers to help them disaggregate it, but not just disaggregate it, but what supports do you need in place? It's been mentioned here that, okay, you want to say, you know, Jordan all the way to, say, Anaheim Hills Elementary to California to Sycamore, to whatever, pick the schools in our district. They're all variances. They're all in different parts of our district. And I understand that. I'm the first one to tell you that. I grew up in this whole town since day one, you know, so I did go to these schools. And in it, now to what I'm saying is, how is it then we do support? What support systems do we need? I want to hear from the teachers, what support systems do you need? Ms. Miner stated that, do we need more instructional aides? Do we need more of teachers who need more professional development in the sense of being provided more SPED kids or EL kids or things of that nature? So I just want to preface it in that manner. So this data that is presented here is that
I'm sorry, this is the time for us to discuss.
This is the data that was presented to CDE, correct?
Excuse me, sorry, I couldn't.
This data in front of us was presented to CDE, correct? From the district. Orange Unified School District provided this data.
Sorry, this is our time to
CDE.
deliberate here.
No, this is a smart, so we send, our scores go to the state and then the state gives us back this data.
Right. So these are what was sent up and retrieved back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, when we talk about the gentleman, I wrote down some of the notes from Dr. Cox in stating how the quality of the programs. It's like, what are those qualities? What programs do we have? So that's a look where I would want to go, is what are we providing? As the one program we did have was supposed to go across the district. But again, one shoe does not fit all. So how is this all relative then? How do we give that support? You know, and again, it was mentioned about test-taking skills. What are we providing in the area of test-taking skills? And we're all in variances. I was probably horrible at it. But, you know, the other thing is the match of the curriculum as well. And again, I took notes from him. The attitudes from the teachers and students as well. Again, this was mentioned in public. You all heard it. So how are we identifying that? How are we looking at it? One question is, what type of strategies? It was mentioned that, we're against AVID and everything with that. And I came out the door and I said, no, I'm not. I'm for it. I fully support it. I fully support it to the nth degree because of a lot of the strategies that are put in place for a lot of the kids. And it helps them get them over that hump, whatever it happens to be in that struggle. So are we using any of those types of strategies? I don't know the answer to that. That's why I pose that to you.
Yes, I just actually did a visit to Prospect Elementary today to look at their AVID implementation. And it was just amazing, the student agency, the students collaborating and working together, the scaffolds and strategies that the teachers were putting in place, but that helped students to really achieve a higher level of rigor. So yes, that is something that is near and dear to my heart as AVID. I think it really helps to close that achievement gap. And that is the purpose of it.
No, absolutely. And you mention it, the word I keep hearing too within education circles is grit. It's the hard work of the individuals, of the students that put in. And then when they get to the real world and understand what is hard work, not everything is given to them. And so, being able to have that grit, that hard work. Question as far as SPED students, are SPED students clearly identified into, let me put it this way. Are EL students automatically identified into the SPED programs?
No.
No?
No. English learners, so, that's one of the things you have to look at, whether a student's struggles or needs are a language issue or a disability issue. So, I don't know if Sue.
So for special education, thank you for the question. We have to follow Title V criteria for identification of students with disabilities. And there are exclusionary factors, and limited English proficiency is an exclusionary factor. That being said, we do have a high number of English learners within the dual umbrella of special education and English learners. So that's higher than the district average. So I think the district average may be 19.2%. And within the special education umbrella, we have 21% of students with disabilities who are also English learners. And so those are the factors that go into that deeper analysis. So thank you for that question.
Okay. Yeah, I just, seeking clarity. We're always said we're not asking, for clarity, and so therefore we are. And again, would it be a fair statement that the comparisons here, and again, I didn't ask for the record, Mr. Velasquez, for any comparisons of districts, but seeing that the districts are around us, the districts compared are all unified, correct? In this report, they're all unified.
The districts in this report are all unified school districts.
And so these districts are Tustin Unified, which is next door, right over the hill on Hughes from Santa Ana, which we have a school in Santa Ana, Fairhaven. Garden Grove, we have a school there. Placentia, Yorba Linda, Irvine, and then us. And it's being mentioned that we're not being compared to the other ones because one's an elementary school district and one's a high school district. So we always compare ourselves to unified school districts. Is that a fair analysis of how we do things?
If looking overall, K-12, then I would say we do usually compare to unified school districts if we're looking K-12. Yeah.
Yes, K-12. Well, we're a K-12. That's why I'm saying we're a unified school district.
That is correct.
Okay. So there's some conversations around Title I. and how are we utilizing those dollars? I know there was a lot of programs that were put forward last, what was it, probably 5 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that. Programs related to Title I schools. Is that correct?
Which programs are you referring
I'm
to?
trying to think of them off the top of my head. I think there was like 4 or 5 of them that were brought to the board.
Well, there is the Community Schools Grant, so
Right.
if that's the
That was
one.
Mr. Irvin who presented to us the grant.
Yes.
And then there was programs to follow.
I'm not, that's some information I can look at for you and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I didn't write them down. But anyway, for future is what kind of programs, and the parents spoke tonight about it, that instead of providing the programs and the teaching opportunities to the parents, how about we direct it to the student?
And that's definitely something that we're looking at right now as we review our data, as we do meetings with each school individually to really see what their needs are and where it is that they would like to focus in order to show improvement. Because we do provide a lot of support to our Title I schools, and they do have extra staff that provides support and that provides good training, but we can look at additional programming that might be beneficial to those students.
Well, seeing that Title I schools, they are provided extra money, am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And what is usually the percentage of extra funds?
Or
added funds, I should
That comes out of Mrs. Rodriguez's department, so I don't know exactly, but I know that every Title I school, they get a certain amount of budgeting for their own school, for the school to decide on the needs as it aligns to their school plans and their goals. And then there is some district level Title I where we pay like our instructional coaches that are at the schools out of that funding, but we can get that information for you, but I don't want to speak out of turn since it does come from Mrs. Rodriguez's department.
Or you can just borrow her money and just move it. Okay, no, I appreciate that, because again, we're talking about all the variances here. We're talking about special education. We're talking about all the language arts, mathematics, and, disaggregating it. And again, if our next approach would be to actually look at each of our schools, but again, from the focus of how do we help them? How do we continue to improve? If you want to look at this as a negative, it's a basis now where we can begin. We can continue to show the public what we're doing. We're not just saying it in speeches, and we're not just saying it. People do review data, regardless of what anybody says. That's just a reality. Of where you want to go to school, where do you want to live, all of that stuff. So, if we can utilize that information and provide that support. One of the things I would like to look at as part of it is how many programs do we have, number one, and how much money have we spent or are spending on those programs? And then from there are those programs useful to the schools themselves? What it is, and again, I'm going to rely on the teaching staff for this, is that instead of getting pulled out for so many PD days, they decide themselves as a collective group, or how to, or is it a segmented group from each area? I don't know the answer to that. Are we providing enough support from the district office to the school sites in that manner? So, those are things that I would really like to dive into, respectfully as well.
Thank you. I'm taking notes of that.
No, again, we can talk offline, but these are just things that I wanted to highlight. And then, again, when it comes from leadership here from the district office, in the sense that, it goes back to what I stated earlier from Dr. Cox, about the attitudes and about test taking, what the importance is of taking a test. I hear comments a lot that, I just go down and mark B all the way down, or, whatever it happens to be. But lend the relevance to what the test is actually about. You know, this is to help the district. This is to help further us. Maybe it's going to help us in a certain area of funding. I don't know. Maybe it's going to help in reclassification of students, depending on what test it is. So as you can see, there's so many avenues to go, and it's like you have to start somewhere. You can't just say, I'm going to cherry pick this and I want this one because it's, you know, best a news feed for me and it's the best talking point for me. It's like, just start somewhere. You know, there isn't anything wrong with looking at it and saying, okay, no one's blaming anybody, but on the same token, what are we doing now to move forward? That's my objective. And I said from the outset, I am not blaming a teacher on this at all. I'm actually saying, how can we further assist? And that's why it's the breaking down of those programs and what monies are we spending. I mean, from the program we just saved, what, a little over, you know, $4 million. So, you know, one of those things. So anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if I have any other questions, I'll follow up with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Yamasaki?
Sorry. Thank you for the information. And I actually do agree with one point that you made, Mr. Ortega, which is we need to use this data to find out what we can do to support our students and our teachers. So that I agree with you on. I just want to also reiterate on the California School Dashboard talking points. And one of the things they mentioned is that the COVID-19 pandemic affected education services and student learning worldwide. In California, the pandemic also interrupted the statewide data collection, assessment, and accountability system. So I think they're making the point that the data that we receive is kind of limited and it should be taken in that way. The other thing they said is that the 2022 dashboard is a restart of the California accountability system. So this sets a baseline. And I just want to share, and I think Ms. Erickson touched upon it. I actually have the data right here where OUSD falls when comparing it to 2018-19 to 21-22. And OUSD, the change is in ELA is minus 3.14%. So we dropped that much. Laguna Beach dropped 5.67%. They're a high performing district. Newport Mesa dropped 4.67%. Los Alamitos dropped 4.45%. So my whole point is that we're kind of in the middle right there. And so we, as a district, I don't think we're out of the ordinary in the levels that we dropped, right? And then with math, the same. I mean, Laguna dropped 10.5%, 54%. Placentia Yorba Linda dropped 6.89%. Garden Grove dropped 6.47%, and we dropped 5.11%. So the data is here to show that we are not like an outlier. We're just consistent with the entire county.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to say, I agree, there were two speakers. I think it was Ms. Chu who said all children deserve to succeed. I think every single person on this board and in this room agrees with that. And all children succeed sort of on their own timeline, depending on what their issues are or their challenges are. And Mr. Pleasant says he has no problem using test scores as long as they are just a piece of the puzzle. And I think, you know, in the last couple of years, we've probably gotten away from having as many sort of academic discussions in our board meetings. We've had a lot of discussions about finances, a lot of discussions about facilities, a lot of discussions about the bond, a lot of discussions about COVID, and we probably have gotten away from having a lot of these because I do think there's a lot going on that maybe we just are not as up on, and we should be up on it because that is the goal, is to use whatever these data points are to improve our student learning at every single level. So I do agree with you as well, Mr. Mr. Ortega, that's the goal. That's the goal, is to give our students the very, very, very best education we can give them. And we do need to have more reports and have more discussion and more robust discussion, and not make any decisions just based on numbers of programs, but looking at how those programs are applied with that particular population and how it may affect.
Can I just say one more point? Are you done? I'm sorry. Okay. What concerns me is some of the speakers' implication is that the reason why Dr. Hansen was let go was because of the poor performance. And we just talked about the performance is really just, the test scores are just an indicator at this time. And I want to remind everyone that she was terminated without cause, right? We all said that. And so I would like the speakers to understand that this is not why she was released.
Okay. Just have a few things to point out. I agree with a lot of my colleagues here. Ms. Erickson made a few good points right now. Mr. Ortega, what he discussed is a lot of the things that I had in mind. One of the things that I'm looking to is, again, the next level report on this, and/or could be the breakdown, high school, middle school, and elementary school, and you could get into multiple years. So there's, that's for discussion. Discussion with Mr. Abercrombie. Just see what we can do. Okay, to take a look at the next level. When I looked at this, like I said, this was concerning, but I did not immediately go to teachers. I immediately went to the many programs that we've recently approved over the past couple years. So again, I want the next level of reporting. I want to be able to, and we will never ever compare one school to another. That would be wrong. That'd be irresponsible of us. But I don't think parents out there are necessarily trying to compare in terms of a bad thing. They just, all they want to do is compare and say, we want that. We want those test scores. How do we do that? How do we get that? Because at my kid's school, the test scores are not working, and so maybe some of the other programs. So my question is going to be, as we get more information, I'm going to want like an evolution of this in terms of the different programs and contractors that we're using. AVID is just an amazing program. When it was, I was there at its inception. A principal at Orange High, S.K. Johnson, is the one that brought it to this district, and from there it just exploded. And that has to be one of the best decisions that was made by the educators back then. But my point is, as we get further into this information, to take a look at the different schools and take a look at the Title I schools, and again, evaluate what programs were running at those schools. What was the cost of those programs? How many hours was there? Were they working with the students when the teacher was not working with them? How many hours did the teachers spend professional development? So all these different programs, I saw that as losing the focus on our academics. And so what I'd like to do is, that's where the evaluation of these programs is. Again, auditing the hours, auditing the cost, and then we can see that. I don't think there was any kind of added value. There's not been any. I don't know. We'll have to evaluate whether or not there's any added value to this. But then also, as we're reviewing all that, can our teachers do some of these programs themselves? Some of the SEL programs with some professional development. Can we have a team of the more seasoned or even just expert teachers to provide the SEL, to provide the equity training, what have you. So rather than pay these contractors, who one of them just left. So that tells me that this contractor leaving and walking away from, it's actually over a $4 million contract, walking away tells me that potentially they knew that I don't know why you'd walk away from over $4 million contract. So that's why I want to see more data, differently, and then just kind of isolate some of the schools and kind of see what can we do better there for the students, and what kind of how inundated were they with these programs, and can some of these programs be absorbed by the teachers, and again, teachers that would require, as Mr. Ortega said a couple of meetings ago, that would probably require some stipends. And if we get to the point where we have a strong team of teachers who are doing some of these programs and going from school to school, what have you, then we may need to hire more teachers to replace those teachers. So this is the kind of, this is the things that process through my mind, okay? And I'm just going off of just the past couple years of all these programs coming on board, when I think a lot of times we can do this in-house. And again, it's working with our teachers, okay? But we need to have discuss this data, good, bad, or indifferent. Let's just, this is kind of just indicators of where the need is. And I'd almost like to, as we go through this, have like the level 1 need, level 2 need, level 3 need kind of thing, and then see how we break it all down and get those resources where they're necessary. Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Ledesma, so you're saying our teachers are going to become the experts of the topics that we're analyzing?
No, I say that we should discuss. First, we got to see what programs are out there, what kind of time is being spent, what kind of time are these programs taking away from our students in their learning, and or all these surveys that they're taking and all that kind of thing. And can we train teachers to do some of the things that they're doing?
Are you talking about TOSAS?
No, I'm talking about.
Isn't that what TOSAS do?
No, hold on.
I'm just curious.
I want to. We have many programs, and many of them are in the Title I schools. What are those programs doing? I mean, are they working out for this? How many hours are they doing? So what I'm talking about is, can we do what those programs do using our own staff?
Okay, so you want a needs assessment on the programs that are existing in our
I don't know
schools?
what, we still got more study to do, right? More study to do, we don't know how many hours these programs have been, how many hours were applied to this program, for these programs in the classroom. I'm talking about classroom time. How much classroom time what percentage of classroom time was these outside programs as opposed to academic time? So, and if we find that it's 25% and 75%, well, and at what cost? What if we roll back some of these programs that we can do ourselves, and then it now becomes only 10%, of these programs, contractors that we're using, and the other 15% we're using our own in-staff teachers.
So we're going to pay our teachers to become specialized in that potentially if
they so choose. I mean, it's up. It's a working relationship here.
I guess I'm kind of confused about.
Well, listen, I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to give you
no.
any conclusions here. I'm
Okay.
just saying we need to keep looking at this data.
Well,
And
you keep talking about programs like there's programs that are separate from the education, like we're sending them out to do programs, but those programs that we have are the support systems and the scaffolding and everything that we're using to support their learning. So we just need to be.
Okay, but
we just need to be really careful that we understand what we're looking at, and we let the experts tell us.
Well, that's
what
why
that
we
is.
need to keep continuing on this path here. I mean, you guys are looking for some conclusions here, and I don't have any conclusions. I just have continued down this path of looking forward and moving forward on improving our educational services here.
No, I was just asking clarifying questions.
No, thank you. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 9:49. 9:49, excuse me.